5 o'clock. And 1, 2, 4, 6, we have a quorum. So I'll call to order the March 18th, 2026 meeting of the Transportation Commission. Ariana, if you could please read the instructions.
Welcome to our virtual meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff, members, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you're asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Ariana. Aiden, if you could call the roll, please.
Sure thing. William Okovich.
Present.
Sean O'Brien.
Present.
Dina Nina Martinez Rutherford. Who I don't see yet. Barbara Harrington McKinney. Who I don't see. Dan Kovich.
Here.
Robbie Weber.
Here.
Denise Jess.
I'm here.
Pepe Barros.
Here.
Chris McCahill.
Here.
Bill Bremer.
Here.
Harold Kleems.
Here.
Lynn Olson.
Here.
And then Kaylee Jameson is excused tonight.
Okay, thanks so much, Aiden. Lynn, it looks like we right now are missing Alders Martinez Rutherford and Harrington McKinney. So you would be able to make motions and vote as long as at least one of them is still not here. Okay, has everyone have an opportunity to look at the minutes from the March 4th meeting? Bill.
I have a comment to the minutes regarding the discussion on Regent Street, and we list all the speakers that came and presented and so forth, but it really doesn't tell anything to the reader about what the commission did. Just as a friendly amendment, I guess, we discussed the Regent Street project and provided comments to the city staff, something like that, to indicate. I know we didn't vote on it,
Yeah,
but it doesn't tell anything to the reader what we did as a result of spending 3 hours on that topic.
I know, and that I understand it's frustrating, but that's the way that the minutes read, and that's the city procedures and how staff is instructed to do minutes to just reflect the actions. And so any of the speakers come or Alders not part of the Transportation Commission speak, their names are noted, but our discussions aren't detailed, just any actions that we take. So I know it's frustrating when we spend 2.5, 3 hours on a topic and made a lot of progress, but that's why staff takes notes otherwise, because the minutes they just don't do it that way. And I believe that's at something the city attorney worked on. Aiden, do you have any other feedback on that?
Yeah, no, I just thought I'd get my 2 cents in. I'll move approval of the minutes.
Oh, okay, thanks, Bill. Alder O'Brien?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second, and I understand your frustration, Bill, when we spend so much time and had such a fruitful discussion. Is there any further discussion with regard to the minutes? Okay, I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried unanimously. Aiden, do we have anybody registered to speak under item 1?
We do not know.
Okay, and I think Ariana indicated there's nobody registered to speak, and I don't see anybody in the queue. Is that correct for you?
Yep, that's correct at this time.
Okay. Does anybody on the commission have any disclosures or recusals this evening? Okay, I'm seeing no hands. Robbie contacted me and let me know that she wished item 2 to be pulled off the consent agenda. So we'll take that up for questions and discussion. It's with regard to the agreement with Baker's Place LLC for 20 to 50 parking permits at the South Livingston Street garage. So I know Stephanie is on vacation. I texted a little bit with Eric Finch. I don't know if he's going to come or not. Anne, did you wish to give a little bit of background?
Yes, I was just going to say I'm here on behalf of Stephanie tonight. So the Baker's Place lease is in place of a previous long-term lease with Baker's Place. So when Baker's Place had gone through development, it was before TDM, and so it was grandfathered in. However, it would have met TDM's requirements even with the lease that was there. So in the previous lease, it didn't fully meet the tenant's needs, is what Baker's Place has identified. There were reserved stalls that were for daytime use. Instead, the lease that's being proposed tonight is for permits, 24-hour permits. So this would allow residents to access with their permit the garages 24/7, nights and weekends. However, the key difference between a permit and a lease, long-term lease, the way we've historically done it, is that a stall is not reserved. It's right of access at the rate they pay to Baker's Place. So when it comes to like access for like during a Sylvie event or really it's Sylvie that really impacts the Livingston garage, the public would still have equal access to the garage. And as it'd be first come, first served basis. So a resident may have to wait. These are 20, the lease is currently, the agreement is looking at 22, a minimum of 20 to a maximum of 50 permits. This is a revenue generating agreement for the parking utility, as at a minimum, Baker's Place has to pay for 20 permits at the commencement of this agreement. For the next 10 years is the term of the lease. It is not an automatic renewal. At that point, there are 2 5-year renewals at the agreement of both parties. There are terms as well for the parking utility that if, things aren't working out, we can, end the agreement. With that, I am happy to take any questions that you may have.
Robbie, go ahead.
Yeah. You said that when Baker's Place went through approval, the TDM requirement was not in place.
Correct.
With this lease, are we imposing any TDM requirements on the, I presume, management company or owners of the building?
Yeah, so we are not, because that's not part of the long-term lease program at this time. However, I do have Trent here, and Trent and I have looked at this together. Trent, especially because he's the expert on TDM. He is the TDM manager. And the way it's set up, it would meet TDM guidelines. The amenities of Baker's Place was really set up with the idea that somebody would be living downtown and not need a car, which is why they don't have a lot of parking on spot in comparison to their neighbor developments, which have come in after the TDM ordinance came into place. It meets at a higher higher, what's the right word, compliance level than its neighbors, which are also passing TDM, because they've come in after the ordinance. So no, we're not imposing it, but yes, it's meeting it, if that makes sense.
So I guess my question is, if these parking spaces were on site, would it still meet TDM requirements?
I'm going to defer to Trent because I don't want to mislead you or misspeak.
Yeah, Robbie, it would still meet TDM requirements. So right now they have roughly 200 apartments and about 110 parking stalls. So it's a very low parking ratio. They also have an agreement for about 15 or so parking stalls in an adjacent parking lot, the Rainbow Project. They have a building that fronts on East Wash, and then the parking lot is on East Main. So I looked at just like if they were to come in today with the same development proposal, and they'd be required 15 TDM points, and what they showed in their plans, they would be exceeding it and be providing at least 18 TDM points. So we felt pretty comfortable with what they're doing right now, having a mixed-use building, having an actual B-cycle station installed on the site, and then secure bike parking within the apartment parking area, that imposing TDM requirements when we don't really have a codified long-term lease TDM agreement in place would be difficult for Baker's Place in particular.
Okay, so if they rent 50 stalls from us plus the 15 they're renting from someone else, they would still meet the required number of TDM points. Yes.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. I'm asking this because I have asked before about TDM requirements for buildings that are requesting spaces from the city of Madison. So this is why I'm asking. There are several existing downtown businesses that were long-term leases, and when this came up previously, I just wanted to know, do we have some way to say, hey, are you doing anything to cut down on your need for parking spaces? So that's kind of why I'm asking it. I didn't realize that Baker's Place was permitted before the TDM ordinance took effect. But
these are very fair questions.
Okay, I want to know this, and I'm going to be asking it for every single time we have a lease. Okay, so just fair warning. Okay, there was a document attached to this item, and someone had quite a few questions, including things like, why are we giving residents of this building the ability to get into this lot, whereas the general public may not be able to get the same guaranteed access, shall we say?
So this is one of the key points of clarification with that comment. I've read that as well. They're not reserved stalls, they're permits. So they do have equal access as the general public. For instance, if, like I said, there's an event at the Sylvie, it's first come, first serve, so they could end up not having a spot at the Livingston. If you're in reference to our website, currently it does not have 24/7 permits available, like the wait list. That is because we're wrapping our arms around the occupancy of the garage. We hired a data manager last year, which is very exciting for the parking division. They hired me last year too, which was exciting for me. So it was part of our reorg, was addressing this question of occupancy, wrapping our arms around it so that we can better understand and start opening up wait lists for 24/7 permits in particular, if there's a demand for them. So that is part of our strategic plan. It is what we are actively working on. But in terms of the public having access to the garage, they still have the same level of access as the residents of Baker's Place would have. There's also no guarantee that Baker's Place would even use 20 permits. You know, this is an option for their residents to utilize. It's just the way the agreement's written, they have to pay a minimum of 20 permits per month, and that we cap them at a maximum. So if there is a high need at their development, they wouldn't be offered more than 50 permits. So again, to help us balance, you know, understanding our occupancy of the garage with public access, it should, you know, once we've got our data together so that we can make sure that we're not putting people in a frustrating situation by issuing them permits and then they never really have access.
Okay, I guess my question was not so much if they have a guaranteed spot, but if I, as a member of the public, wanted to be able to get the same deal as the management of Baker's Place, would I be able to?
Yes. Yeah.
So I can basically get a 24/7 permit to enter the garage and park there for the same amount of money.
Yes, the rate is set by the ordinance. The ordinance is currently at $148 per month. Like I said, we're wrapping our arms around occupancy before we open up the wait list. But the difference between Baker's Place and a citizen getting a 24/7 permit at the Livingston is that Baker's Place has to pay an administrative fee of 10% on top of the $140 that we would charge the general public per ordinance. So the rates are set by ordinance. It's not a discounted rate beyond what a member of the public would receive.
I thought that the contract or what the documents that we saw had a lower rate.
Previously, the original rate was lower because it was signed years ago. However, what they're switching to, the permits, is, like I said, designated. The rates are designated by ordinance. So we don't have the finalized document attached because that's still in negotiations. They're like on their last round, but it's looking to be the $140, which is the same that a resident would pay, but they have to pay an amplifier because we have to do this administrative work to issue the permits and, you know, create this contract.
Okay. But you said that right now you're sort of talking about opening up wait lists. So is the public able to get a space at the Livingston ramp? Or do they have to be put on a wait list and maybe they'll be able to get one and maybe they won't? And then the question is, why does Baker's Place get priority?
So Baker's Place's lease that they had and have right to, it's going to be a mutual rescission of that previous lease existed before this agreement is coming into place. I shouldn't say wait list. So our website just currently says that it's not available. And that's just because as I was saying, we are wrapping our arms around the occupancy data. Once that comes into place, we'll be able to make the decision of what is happening. But they did have a lease long before, which was reserve stalls. So even in switching to this agreement, the public is actually getting more access to Livingston Garage than they previously had.
Okay, I guess I'm just confused because I don't know the timeline for what was happening with Baker's Place. They had a contract to have reserved spaces in the Livingston ramp. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and how many?
That was 40.
Okay, and now instead of having reserved spaces, they're going to have access, but not reserved spaces. So the residents are not being guaranteed that they will be able to park there. And it's between 20 and 50. Is that right?
Correct. They have to pay for a minimum of 20 permits, but if they need more, they can't go over 50. The key difference between the reserve stalls and the permits is the reserve stalls were only for daytime hours, whereas the permits are 24/7 access, but no guarantee. So it's a trade.
Okay. So before it was only evenings and weekends, and they felt like the residents might want to be able to be in there 24/7. So now we're changing it, and it's going to be a higher rate because it's for more access, but they're not guaranteed a spot. Am I
Correct.
summing this up correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Do we know whether these spots are unbundled from the rent, as would be required, I think, or at least they get points? I don't know. Trent, is it required that they unbundle, or is it just points if you unbundle?
Yeah, it wouldn't be required. It would be worth points. And going back to what I was saying before, as far as like if this project was to come in today, if they unbundle parking, which I didn't include in that 18-point estimation, that would put them up to 28 points. So 13 points above what they would be required to provide.
Okay. I think you've answered all of my questions. I was just very confused by this and whether we were giving preferential treatment to a developer who suddenly discovered that he didn't want to build the parking and we're providing it to him. I mean, I still think 140 is kind of a deal, as opposed to having to build it themselves. But that's, if that's what we're charging the general public, then that's fine. So I think you've answered all of my questions.
We will always appreciate an engaged commissioner.
Yeah, I think
Thank
a lot of
you.
us, Robbie, I think a lot of us had those same questions. So thanks for asking them all. Christoph, did you have something to add?
Yeah, as noted, we're sort of putting together a larger policy here, but I would say that from a big picture TDM standpoint, I would say it is good for us to encourage buildings to use spaces in our garages rather than building their own. First of all, the garage already exists. We're using parking spaces that already exist. And secondly, spaces in a public garage will always be used more efficiently than spaces in an individual building, which means we are building less parking for the same amount of use and have a lot more option to be used for other purposes afterwards. If a residential building builds dedicated parking, that parking's only ever going to be used by residents in that building. If we have spaces in a garage, it can be used by a lot of different things. So overall, I think us having agreements with developers in which developers buy permits in a garage serves a larger TDM purpose of sharing and consolidating parking rather than having parking within each individual building. And I think that is a larger big picture benefit here.
Okay. I appreciate that, and I think you're right. I'm just more sort of concerned about the fairness of one entity being able to acquire spots and maybe other entities not. So thank you.
And thanks for all of that background. I watched the finance committee and there were a lot of questions and you anticipated a lot of them and provided a lot of information. And Trent, thanks for that too. And I think it's most helpful to understand the background and the fact that they had reserved spots that were available only to them. And now you're trading that for permits, which give these people potential access to the garage, but don't guarantee them a space. So I guess in my mind, that's advantageous to the city and to the use of the garage, particularly for special events. And I'm happy to hear that the pricing appears to be equal to what somebody from the public would pay. Plus, they have to pay an administrative charge. Is that all correct, Ann?
You are correct. Yes.
Okay. And that's very helpful. It's very unusual for us to be asked to approve something without having the document in Legistar for us to see all of those details. So while it's unusual for us to get all the information verbally, we'll see if people are comfortable getting, you did a very good job of explaining it and giving us the history, and that, you know, the lease agreement that's existing is in Legistar from the past. So all of my questions are answered. Robbie, we still have the following item on our future agenda items. Discussion regarding including TDM requirements in contracts for businesses leasing city parking. So that's on the scope, you know, on our to-do list. Once we get through some of these other things that we have a little bit more immediate priority. So Trent, that's something that we'll want to talk about eventually to see how we can work TDM into that piece of the puzzle. Are there other questions or discussion with regard to this item? Okay, we would need Harold?
Yeah, I was going to make the motion to approve.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Alder Okovich.
A second.
Okay, Harold, did you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to recommend approval to the Common Council. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to do a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, thanks very much. And Ann and Trent, thanks so much for coming and providing all of that helpful information. Very much appreciated. Okay, we move on to item 3, the traffic signal priority list. We have David and Jerry here tonight, I believe, and Yang's here as well.
Yeah, thank you, Ann. I will ask David and Jerry to handle it.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead.
David, we can't hear you.
Yep. How's that?
That's good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a quick recap of how we got here. So this is meeting 2 of 2 for our traffic signal priority list consideration. So back on December 3rd of 2025, there were 4 intersections that were approved by Transportation Commission: Packers and Schlingen, D'Onofrio Drive and Westtown Way, High Crossing Boulevard in Lancaster and City View, and Highway 30 and Fair Oaks. So those 4 locations were approved for study. So we have conducted those studies and have revised our ranking on the list. So if you look at the list that was provided in December versus now, you may see some shifting in the rankings based off of those studies. And we're here to present those findings tonight. So what happens then after tonight? So you'll make a recommendation on whether or not you agree with our recommendations to install signals or not, which you've already had a little preview from the attachments on the agenda, for the agenda on that, which I'll have Jerry in a minute speak more clearly on. But once we get past tonight's meeting with that recommendation, then we would move on to an actual design for a traffic signal, or potentially in this case, we would have one more step with having to coordinate with the DOT, because the location, in particular Packers and Schlingen, is a connecting highway. So they would also have to be on board with approving of that traffic signal. But you know, obviously tonight, if we can get the support of TC on this, you know, that would be part of your motion then. But if we do move forward with the traffic signal, then we would, again, go forward with the design, potential capital budget amendment if indeed we had a fast track project, or we would just put it into next year's budget for construction, and then, of course, move forward with the Public Works contract to build it. And if there were assessments involved, the assessment district would be created, and we would move forward with that whole process through BPW, and then we get the final costs for the design, or the construction, I should say, and then move forward with the final assessment schedule. So overall, that's where we're at today, and I'd like to turn it over to, unless you have questions of me, turn it over to Jerry, who can speak in more detail on the 4 locations that were under study and what the recommendations would be.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, thank you. Let me start by sharing my screen. All right. So, yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Jerry Shipp. I'm traffic engineer with City Madison. The 4 locations that we looked at this year are Packers Avenue, Schlimgen, on the north side, D'Onofrio Drive and Westtown Way, on the west side of the city near the Westtown Mall, High Crossing Boulevard, Lancaster Drive and City View, over near the Easttown Mall, and Highway 30 westbound ramp at Fair Oaks Avenue. For every one of these locations, we ran through a series of studies. If the traffic or if the intersection was new to the list, even if we felt like it wasn't really all that close to meeting warrant, we went through and performed delay studies and turning movement counts just to kind of build a baseline in case it shows up on the list in the future. We also updated the crash history for the 12-month and 5-year crash history at these 4 intersections, as well as the 12-month crash history at all intersections on the list. In the past, we've just kind of described the intersection, looked at the crash history, and if it met a warrant or not. This year, we slightly changed the way we're reporting on this. We're showing a 12-month crash summary as well as a 5-year crash summary, just to kind of show what were the last 12 months like? Is there anything new happening out there? And then what was the intersection, kind of looking a few years in the past. We are working with the new traffic signal warrant for the crash history warrant with the new MUTCD, which they do account for kind of if you have a history of crashes that could be correctable at an intersection, but you don't have that one really bad year. Previously, the warrant just said if you have 5 correctable crashes in a 12-month period, you could consider adding a signal. And so they just kind of they tweaked it and they said, well, maybe you would have 4 years or 3 years of 4 crashes. That's that kind of indicates there's a problem as well. So in the future, we will change this from a 12-month and 5-year to a 12-month and 3-year to meet that warrant. But for now, we're still going 5 years back. We are also kind of reporting on every warrant individually. And so we'll start with Packers and Schlimgen. This intersection is number 34 on the list of intersections which do not meet warrant 1A or 1B. That is just one of the warrants that we have to work with. We kind of summarize what we analyzed, but did find that in warrant 5, the school crossing warrant, we do meet this warrant. We are seeing more than 20 children crossing the street in any given hour. We've had communications with, there's a nearby Montessori school on the east side of Packers Avenue. We've called them and talked to them. We've seen pictures and videos of their students crossing. This picture actually is from a few years ago of a class of students, and we'll kind of get into this in a little bit more details, but I believe on that individual crossing, there was 74 people crossing the street. And we'll talk about how 74 people crossing 6 lanes does not meet a signal warrant. But it does meet a school warrant. So we are recommending installing a traffic signal here. We have shown with the RFB that we've tried other means here. We've tried other devices, and kind of based on crash history, based on user experience, and the volumes crossing here, we are recommending that we install a traffic signal. We are also bringing this here because BRT is also interested in a traffic signal here, but we really wanted to bring it here separate from BRT, just in case something happens with the BRT process or some late minute station relocations or the project funding gets pulled. We don't know what, I don't want to make this sound like it's more than it is, but we just want to make sure that if something were to happen here with BRT, that we still have this recommendation that even without BRT, the city is still interested, or the staff, we believe the signal should still go here. So that is Packers-Schlimgen. That's the only one we are recommending adding a signal. I'll quickly run through the others. D'Onofrio Way and Westtown Way. It's a T intersection. Did not have a massive crash problem. We went out there, did delay studies. During the PM peak, we saw some backups of around 9 vehicles that would kind of come and go for a couple minutes at a time, but did not really come close to meeting any of the delay warrants or any other warrants for that matter. So we're recommending maintaining the current 2-way stop, but we also are looking at possibly a 4-way stop configuration here. There's kind of a separate process that we will use for evaluating that, but we've passed that along to our engineers that look at stop configurations. For City View Drive and High Crossing Boulevard, this is another location where we didn't really see it meeting any of the warrants. There's not a ton of traffic here. There is some trend in the crashes, even though there's not a high volume of crashes, but there does seem to be a northbound to eastbound angle crash trend here that is likely due to some difficult vision. There's a building on the southwest corner that's kind of built up, and the road kind of bends in a little bit, and so drivers might be struggling to see traffic coming around that bend. But in terms of crashes or volumes, we're not close to meeting the warrant here. So we're recommending maintaining a 2-way stop configuration for now. And then Commercial Avenue, Fair Oaks, in the westbound Highway 30 off-ramp. This one, we did see a pretty high number of crashes in 2025. We saw 8 crashes, and all 8 were types typically considered to be correctable. They were all drivers coming off the ramp and getting involved in an angle crash either between northbound or southbound drivers. 4 of the 8 crashes led to 5 people being injured. We looked at the 5-year crash history, saw 19 recorded crashes, 16 of those 19 considered to be correctable. And again, 8 of those 19 happening last year. So there does seem to be something going on out here. We look at the crash warrants. Now, we were only able to get manual turning movement counts, not full 24-hour volume counts, but kind of based on the volumes that we're seeing with those manual turning movement counts, we do believe this may meet warrant aside from the crash warrant. However, the road network out here is a little challenging. I don't know if I can pull up a Google Street View. So this is the intersection here. It's just that if you were coming off Highway 30, it's the 2-way stop you come to at Fair Oaks, but just about 100 feet north, Commercial Avenue comes in from the east. And then you've got ramps to the south that kind of connect into local streets. And then so you have a lot of commercial avenues out here. You have Commercial Avenue at Fair Oaks south of the highway, Commercial Avenue and Fair Oaks north of the highway, and Commercial Avenue, Fair Oaks north of Commercial Avenue, Fair Oaks. There's a lot of Commercial Avenue and Fair Oaks. But with the signal here, we also want to take a little bit more time and look at would a signal on the south side have to go in just to kind of have a good ramp operation. We'd have to, obviously it's a ramp with State Highway. We have to coordinate with WSDOT. There's a lot of things to consider. Luckily, we will have a corridor study coming up soon. And so we will kind of pass this on to them and work with them to see is a signal here the best operation? If we put a signal here, do we have to put a signal for the other ramp? Do we have to do something with Commercial Avenue? Are there other movements within the neighborhood that we have to consider? To us, it's just one that we maybe want to take our time with and not just jump into recommending a signal. So our recommendation is maintain as it is for now, but we're going to include this in with our Fair Oaks corridor study. And that is the end of that report. And I think before we go into discussion, we did have another report or another presentation to kind of go along with this to help provide some context to some of these traffic signal warrants, if that's okay with you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So this became pretty evident whenever we look at high speed, high volume intersection arterials with intersections like we have with Packard-Schlimgen. We seem to struggle with what do we do here. And so I wanted to go over exactly what do the warrants say and maybe help provide some context as to why, what are our options and why does it seem like we can never install a signal if that's, maybe what we're looking at. So the common trend at these intersections, they are very high volume. They are high speed, so over 35 miles an hour, over 40 miles an hour, observed, not posted. And we have relatively minor side streets, but there is still a reason for crossing. And so the MUTCD really sets different thresholds based on the speed. So at 35 miles an hour or higher, our pedestrian warrants go down by 30%. So all of a sudden, now we start looking at kind of a different graph that says, okay, look at a 70% of our warrant. And over 40 miles an hour, we do the same thing for drivers. It's not explicitly stated in the MUTCD why we do this, but if we think about Vision Zero and crash severity, I like to believe that's because they recognize the difference in risk when we're talking faster than 35 miles an hour for pedestrians and then higher than 40 miles an hour even for drivers. But one thing we see is above 40 miles an hour, and this is a very generalized graph I'll get into, or chart, we need more pedestrians crossing the street than we need drivers. And these volumes are pretty high. I mean, there are some intersections downtown that would not meet pedestrian warrant, but you would go out there and say, well, surely this is enough people crossing the street. That's, 93 people an hour is quite a bit. So warrant one, and this is how we rank all of our intersections on our list, is based on how it meets this warrant. Generally just looks at over 8-hour period, do we have enough traffic volume here? And there's different, we can use 100%, 70%, 56%. There's different recommendations for kind of lowering that threshold and what the geometry of the street looks like. But when we look at the 4-hour warrant, the pedestrian 4-hour and the vehicle 4-hour warrant, we see for the pedestrian side at these high speed, high volume intersections, we need 75 pedestrians crossing for every hour in that 4 hours and at least 775 vehicles. For cars, for drivers, we need about 950 vehicles on the main line, but 60 vehicles on the side street. Again, for every hour in those 4 hours. For our peak hour warrant, we look at the same thing. We need a little bit more traffic for our peak hour, 1,050 vehicles, but we need 93 pedestrians. For drivers, we need a few more drivers on the main line, 1,250, but we need 75 drivers on the side street. So it becomes difficult to meet traffic signal warrants for the pedestrian warrant for traffic signals. So we do have other options. The pedestrian hybrid beacon was largely created as a way to provide some other device that doesn't meet the signal warrant. It has its own graph here. It now kind of treats the length of the crossing as a function, but generally speaking, we're looking at, do we have 20 people crossing the road? So it's a much lower threshold. But it's a different device. It's a beacon, not a signal. It's dark when it's not in use, and then it flashes yellow, goes to solid yellow, solid red. The walk comes on, but then when the flashing walk comes on, we get a wig-wagging red pattern, like a railroad crossing. And this does bring up some concerns for many engineers because we tell drivers in our driving manuals that a dark signal you're supposed to treat as a stop. Well, this is a beacon, it's not a signal, so you can drive through it, which is kind of contradicts what we're trying to tell people about what to do with dark signals. The wig wagging red at this intersection tells you it's fine to go if the coast is clear. But the same wig wagging red at a railroad crossing means you better stop, there's a train coming. So we've kind of got mixed messages with this device compared to railroad crossings and compared to other signals. We look at what the FHWA STEP guideline says about RFBs. That's another device that we can use. And we kind of find that we start getting into high volume, high speed streets. RFBs are not really recommended. That doesn't mean you can't use them, but they recommend PET hybrid beacons. But again, if we're placing PET hybrid beacons near railroad crossings, that's got safety concerns. Florida today is actually experimenting with a new device. It is, I'm going to call it 95% of a traffic signal. The only difference is when the flashing don't walk is on, these red lights up here flash red. Otherwise, it's a traffic signal. So we've kind of come up with creative ways to not install traffic signals, but install things that are very similar to traffic signals. And so I hope that kind of provides some additional context and some background of our signal warrants and kind of why we struggle at these intersections and what are our other options and maybe why we use some other options but not others. So that was our presentation. Open it up for questions.
Christoph, did you have something to say before we go to members?
Yeah, I think one thing that is really important to understand with the warrant system, which is created in the MUTCD and essentially applies to every jurisdiction in the United States in a variety of different ways. When I say a variety of different ways, the legal means by which it applies to us vary. The basic thought behind the signal warrants is that they are a tool to avoid installing traffic signals. It is very notable that when you look at the signal warrants, the MUTCD clearly says, even if you meet a warrant, you don't have to install a signal, but if you don't meet a warrant, you shouldn't install a signal. So it's very much intended as a tool for saying no to the installation of signals, which is coming from a variety of things. I think it's coming from the idea that we shouldn't slow down cars on major streets. It's coming from the idea that signals are expensive to operate and maintain. It's coming from the idea that too many signals sort of breaks up a roadway network. It's coming from the basic idea of a hierarchy of a grid of arterial streets. But I think whenever we talk about warrants, we have to realize these were written by a committee in order to give us reasons not to install signals. And that's the framework we have to operate within with the MUTCD.
Thanks, Christoph. Robbie, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the explanation of Commercial Avenue and Fair Oaks and Highway 30, because I looked at the crash history and I was like, what the hell? You know, I mean, it looks like it's pretty obvious that we need some intervention here, but I understand that we might have some other, you know, there's other things coming up. And so that puts my mind at ease a little bit. But my question was, maybe I missed it in the charts or your explanation. Do the warrants at all consider, you know, when you talked about how you need more pedestrians and a lot of downtown streets wouldn't meet that, do they consider at all the number of lanes on these high-speed roads?
Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, the way they consider the geometry of the intersection for the main line, they just break it into, is there one lane or is there more than one lane? It does provide some language saying if there's a wide median, you can actually treat the intersection as two different intersections. So if you want to think of it as like, you could say, well, you make a 2-stage crossing for even for drivers, cross to the median, then wait, and then cross again. So there is language saying to do that. For the side street, it looks at what does the lane configuration look for the side street? Is there a dedicated right turn lane? Guidance says if there's a dedicated right turn lane, then you don't even have to really consider the right turning drivers because they can just turn right. In some cases in the past, and I can think of 2 intersections where even though there was a dedicated right turn lane, the right turn volume was high enough where that still was a reason. So Aberg Avenue and northbound Packers ramp, that's heavily due to right turn volume. East Park and American Parkway, that was heavily due to a large right turn volume, even struggling. So they're all stated as ways to, like things to consider, but they're not bolded statements. They're not shall statements. They're, sorry, for the side street, they're not really shall statement, but for the main line, they do want you to consider how many main lanes there are. Does that answer your question?
Well, yeah. I mean, it just seems like, a 2-lane, 40-mile-an-hour street for a pedestrian is very different than a 4-lane, 40-mile-an-hour street. Even if there's a median, if it's 2 and 2, it's still, but Packers, I mean, one of the reasons Packers at that intersection is such a disaster is that what's the speed limit there? What's the speed limit on Packers there at that location?
Well, give me a minute. I will look.
Well, whatever it is, while you're looking, whatever it is, I know people go faster than that, like
Yes.
a lot faster. So part of the problem is people are going way over the speed limit and there's many lanes. So the chances that all the lanes are going to stop, even with the, even with the light, the flashing light, is minuscule. I mean, I've tried to cross that thing on my bike and it was terrifying. So I'm just wondering if, first of all, the design speed, you've got the speed limit and then you've got the design speed, which are 2 different things. And then you've got how many lanes the pedestrians are supposed to cross. Needing 75 pedestrians crossing every hour is insane for a 4-lane road. It's just crazy. So that's just putting that in there. And I just wondered if they considered how many lanes the pedestrians had to cross when they looked at the warrants for number of pedestrians.
I think the way the MUTCD tries to consider that is by recommending you look at how many acceptable gaps pedestrians can find. And so if we're to assume an acceptable gap is the crossing distance divided by a walking pace, a 1-lane road is going to have probably more acceptable gaps than a 3-lane, one direction of a street. I see Yang's got his hands up. I'll go to him.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Go ahead, Yang.
Oh, no, Jerry, you are right on. Yeah, you are right on. Yeah. So we are very, unhappy with, the signal warrant system in MUTCD, from practitioner's standpoint of view, working for cities, especially, pedestrian warrants. So, people working like us, working for cities, has tried to influence the national committee, trying to change that. But, that definitely is a process. I do want to point out that, there are certain degree of engineering judgment, involved. I think that's one power that, engineers, we have that we we need to kind of tell us, right? That's some power we have, and we have to feel comfortable, using that more, instead of trying to, go backward, trying to, quote unquote, right, protect ourselves. So yeah, I do think we're on solid ground recommending this signal here. I also want to say that the speed limit is 35 miles per hour here.
Yeah, that's not what people go. I mean, everybody knows that. It's just really fast out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and you are right. People knows the industry history of the design speed and the speed limit. So I think that's something that as an industry we need to rethink as well. So thank you. Yeah. So Jerry has been doing a really good job, explaining the issue, and thank you, Krista, for your comment as well.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for all that information. Robbie, that's all you had then?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Alder Ogovich, go ahead.
Thank you, Trey. Thanks for the presentation. It is very interesting to see. The photo you showed of the children crossing a 6-lane road is also kind of horrifying. And so I think demonstrates why we need a signal there. I did want to ask for the Florida example you showed. I'm assuming that's not in MUTCD, is it?
No, and we haven't reached out to them. But I believe the logic is because there is an interval where the red light is flashing where drivers could proceed, they can call it a beacon or a mid-block pedestrian crossing device. It's not a traffic signal. So it kind of seems like a splitting hairs a little bit because there's that one different interval, but it is a way that they are trying to both uphold the MUTCD signal warrants, but also give people, a higher level or maybe a better crossing experience.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering, I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I believe they have an experiment going on with that and Yang's got his hands up. Maybe he's got more.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yang, did you have some more to say about that?
Yeah, so Jerry just said that. Yeah. So typically, these agencies apply to Federal Highway for permission to experiment, with any devices that's not currently in MUTCD. We've done quite a few of those, like previously our bike signals, for example, like our red Boston markings right now, and a few other things. So what they do is that the federal government grants the agencies, a time period to try this out, and then share their, report their data to see how things work. So we'll keep an eye on this. We welcome any innovation in this area. I think we need more tools in our toolbox. Jerry, Dave, and I kind of reviewed the Florida's setup. We don't feel like it's perfect, but it has it has its merits. So we'll look more into it, and we'll get in touch with them if it looks promising. It is possible that we can join them. We can require permit to experiment, and that we could try something in some of those here where that we have difficulties. Getting a traffic signal in, for situations, especially like for pedestrian crossings. So that's all I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, the only other thing I would add, it's more of a comment, is just we had experiences with RFBs across multiple lanes at West Washington and the bike trail, and now here at Schlingen and Packers. And I'm wondering if it might be helpful to understand where we have RFBs that are crossing multiple lanes, more than 2 lanes, because those might be priority areas for us to look at in the future. I guess I would be curious too if it matches up with our high injury network.
Jerry or Yang, who wants to handle that comment?
I can comment on that. Yeah. Thank you, Audrey. That's a very, really good observation. So the short answer is that, our RFBs crossing multiple lane roadways does coincide with our high injury network in general. And there also is a sort of process that we had in the city on whether actually go ahead to make some improvements and install RFBs on multiple lane roadways, like on East Washington Avenue, like on Park Street, like on Maidaville Boulevard. So we decided to do it, knowing that it's not perfect. However, though, because we know we couldn't get a signal in, and also we do believe that having something there is better than nothing. It's not perfect, and we don't have a 100% compliance, but we did do some studies. Actually, asking Jerry, do you want to study here for RFB here at the Shimigan and the Packers? We did see significant improvement in compliance rate for vehicles yielding to pedestrians since the RFBs installed on these multi-lane roadways. So to us, kind of that's a compromise that we did, where we don't have a better tool. However, I think the goal is always looking forward to see whether we have new tools added in our toolbox, and we want to use them. And also, we also have as we have our goal to make more changes to these type of streets in the future. Hopefully, make the whole corridor much better for all users, especially pedestrians, cyclists. In the future. So a few efforts kind of are working parallel. Again, it's not perfect, but we thought we shouldn't let it perfect be the enemy of making any progress. But we'll try to keep making progress on this.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Let's update the MUTCD and get you some better tools. So.
Yeah, we have been working really hard, especially through NACTO on it. I actually with the last administration at USDOT, I was actually part of the team at NACTO, met with very high level officials at USDOT in the Secretary's office, trying to move some changes forward. So hopefully that effort can resume sometime, and we can, serve the public a lot better. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. That's all you had then? Okay, great. Harold, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Jay. One question and maybe one comment. Given the difficulty with reaching the pedestrian warrants, do you have any data, like for the past couple cycles of signals that did get installed, how many of those we actually installed based on pedestrian warrants rather than other ways to get them installed? Do we ever install a signal merely only because of one of the pedestrian warrants?
I have been here for 11 years. I do not recall any signals going in on pedestrian warrants. We do have signals that are exclusively for pedestrians, and we've had them for some number of years. I can't, off the top of my head, give you an exact date of when they went in, but I can list them. Seago and Sawyer was installed many, many decades ago, and that has, up until the recent reconstruction, only served pedestrians. We've now added bike signals, so there is now a side street bike use for that. East Campus Mall, the two signals at University and Johnson, they are only there to serve the high number of pedestrian that cross there, and that for sure meets warrant. And the same for Babcock and University, Babcock and Campus. Off the top of my head, those are the 4 intersections I can think of that are like exclusive pedestrian signals.
Yeah, thank you.
Yang, go ahead.
No.
Yeah, I add a couple to Jared's list. Yeah, so University and Orchard, and also Johnson and Orchard Street. So yeah, those we're putting for pedestrians as well. And also, I would argue the signal. It's definitely not a traditional signal, but a signal at Spring and Charter Street, Spring Street and Charter Street. That one was installed because pedestrian and a bicycle crossing as well. So we do get a few, but again, it's really hard to justify signals based on current pedestrian volume warrant. So the most of those mentioned by Jerry and I are kind of focused in the downtown campus area. But we definitely think that other area city will need this as well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and I think. Oh, go.
I'm sorry. I just had one thing to add to Yang's comment, and I think you kind of touched on it. The important common piece to that is those are all city streets. There's no shared jurisdiction with other agencies that we have to sell them on this. And as a matter of fact, the Seago Sawyer, we have the documents that were presented to, I don't know if it was called the Transportation Commission at the time or if it was called something else, but when they were looking at devices to add there, our traffic engineering department kind of laid out the options and said, pick which one you want. And the Transportation Commission at the time chose a signal. And so that's why one was installed. So that would have not met any signal warrants, but it was deemed to be necessary to have a signal there.
Again, engineering judgment on that one.
Right, and that's where I'm going with this. I think based on what you presented, based on what you just answered, we're like, yeah, there's a few cases in a city of 300,000 people where you actually do meet those warrants laid out. But I think it's pretty obvious to everybody on the commission, and I think if you presented these facts to other people, they would probably agree that this seems to be a broken system where you have requirements that basically can hardly ever be met. And you have all these charts and tables, and it's like 106 pedestrians, not 105, like giving it this scientific appearance. And I mean, I haven't dug deeply into this, but what is the science behind there? Like, is safety the primary outcome? Is it safety for the people walking? Is it mobility for people walking? I doubt that is what it is. And so I think for me, the conclusion is that at least in the cases where we have the option to, we really have to rely more on the engineering judgment. And, I have a lot of trust in traffic engineering. We also have this body as like a kind of check toward that. But yeah, I think to me, the conclusion here is that engineering judgment has to be used more frequently to think about like, yeah, we have a Vision Zero commitment. We have a commitment to pedestrian safety. And so we can't rely on these warrants in order to keep us safe and in order to get to zero fatalities and zero serious injuries by 2035. So that's my 2 cents on this.
It's definitely a challenge, isn't it? Thanks, Harold. Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. I'd actually like to raise a point of order here. While I appreciate the informational presentation from staff and the rich discussion we're having, I'm mindful that our last meeting went so long that I think many of us couldn't really focus, including myself, and we've got 4 more items on the agenda. So I think unless there are action items and questions that service approving those actions or providing feedback to staff, I would really love to sort of cut back on the back and forth, as nerdy as we all are on this stuff, so that we can be effective through the rest of the evening. And with that, I would like to move that we approve the 4 recommendations from staff.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the 4 recommendations from staff. Alder Okovich.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Chris, did you wish to speak to your motion?
No, just that I do appreciate the thought and discussion.
Okay. All right. Is there discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no hands, I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain or wishes a roll call vote. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried unanimously. And while we normally don't really go in for informational presentations, and I agree, Chris, we had just an incredibly long and intense meeting last time, but Jerry, I do appreciate better understanding the difficulty you have of meeting these warrants. So I found that to be very helpful. So thanks for letting us know that information. Okay, next we have Wistat North Stoughton Road discussion. Christoph.
Yes. So this should be a very straightforward and very quick item, but we wanted to give you an update on North Stoughton Road. This is a corridor where a final environmental assessment was previously completed in 2025. But due to WSDOT having discussions with the airport as well as the city of Madison, WSDOT is proposing a change to this design and is now doing an environmental reevaluation to enable that change. There was a public meeting scheduled for this week. That is now being rescheduled due to our blizzard, but will take place. So the 2 big changes here is one is a realignment of US 51 North Stoughton near Hanson Road. I'll show you a little more details on that realignment in a moment. But the big impact on our transportation network is that realignment allows for a traffic signal at Stoughton Road and Hanson Road. We think that is a major benefit because especially as that area continues to grow, there will be more and more people coming from that direction. It's also a major route to the Hanson Road bus garage. So we already have significant deadheading buses coming through here. And it is a major access route to the UW Health Hospital and Clinic up there. The second thing is this also includes a shared use path along the east side of the roadway for the entire length of the corridor. I'll talk a little more about that in a moment as well. So here you can see the realignment itself. This realignment enables a future expansion of the runway at the airport, which was the airport's interest in here. You can see that future expansion in blue. That is not a part of this project. That is a separate project that the airport would need to go through its own process on. But in green, you can see the runway protection zone. This was a major driver in that formerly the location of Hanson Road and North Stoughton was within that runway protection zone, which limited the ability to put traffic signals there. This realignment moves it out of that zone and means a traffic signal can be installed there. So WSDOT's proposal is a signalized intersection with protected left turn lane right there. The other piece is that if you look at this map, previously what is shown in red was a bike ped path, a shared use path along one side of the roadway. In the previous design, that path ended just before you got to the airport, at which point anybody on a bike would need to merge into highway traffic. And then the path restarted on the other side of the airport. That was also due to an interpretation of the runway protection zone that current airport management and WSDOT have both concluded was probably not the right way to interpret that. So this proposal now includes a continuous path there. As noted here, this does fall under WSDOT cost share agreement, so it would require the city to contribute some additional cost to make that happen. But we think in terms of the role in the bike network, that is very valuable and very much worth it. And with that, that is the update, and happy to answer any questions.
That sounds like all good news to me, Christoph. Comments or questions for Christoph? I am seeing no hands. Any comments or questions? Okay. Thanks very much for that important update, Christoph.
You're welcome.
And we'll let everybody know when that meeting is rescheduled, that public information meeting is rescheduled. So thank you. Chris, annual transportation improvement plan. And thanks for allowing us to move this from the last meeting to this meeting. So
no problem. Thanks everyone. I'm gonna share my screen here. All right, everybody seeing a white presentation?
We are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, great. So thanks everyone. Chris Petakowski, City Engineering. This is a presentation on the draft Transportation Improvement Program. A lot of you have seen this before in years past. What the Transportation Improvement Program is our basically our proposed set of projects over the next 5 years. And what happens is we update that each year, go to various committees for input, and go out to the public as well, get input. And ultimately, this kind of helps inform our budget request for the mayor that is due about a month from now. So the draft is a little bit fluid. It kind of changes throughout the year depending on different issues that pop up and budget issues. So ultimately, what ends up getting approved in the November capital budget is kind of sets the next year, and then the out years are planned as well. So I'll be talking a little bit about our tool that we use and some updates that Jose made to the tool this year. I'll get into the programs that we have for proposed projects, and then some standalone major projects that show up in our budget as their own line item, and then a real quick brief summary of the streets as of the end of last year. For the scoring tool, we did a major updates last year, so there wasn't a ton of changes that we felt were strongly needed this year, but we did do a couple of things. So for people who are kind of unaware, the tool it's a GIS file that we set up that reaches out and grabs a bunch of different data types, and we updated the data for our water pipes, our storm pipes, our sanitary pipes, our pavement conditions, pedestrian and transit Basically what happens is, each year some of that data changes, like for instance, the water main might have 3 breaks on it, and then it becomes has a higher core risk score, or pavement condition, that it could have degraded over the past 2 years and got a new rating. So we do all those updates and plug those back into the tool. The bike scoring map, Jose and Kevin are working on a change in method that's not in there yet, but later in 2026, using all ages and ability map that is being created. So we'll be making an update next year with that. High injury network, there's the data is actually not updated. That is coming from UW-Madison and will be updated later this year. And then the equity areas map had no changes as well. Our finance department is in charge of that map, and we are told that will be updated later this year as well. So those will occur probably with the next iteration. So, as I mentioned, we have the GIS tool. We can make a map of all these individual conditions that we score on: pedestrian needs, stormwater, water main, sanitary sewer, pavement condition, equity, high injury network, transit network, and the bicycle network. So all these scores kind of get added together and put into the GIS file, and helps us create our total score for projects to help us select to a tool to help us select projects for the TIP. And you can see here kind of a lot of the lower scoring streets are kind of shaded out in gray, and then the higher scoring in green through yellow to orange and purple are the worst, or the highest scoring. So using that tool, we help try to select the projects, and then I'll kind of walk through what we have proposed. Reconstruct Streets program is a program where the streets are pretty much completely in need of replacement. We go in, replace all the stone base, all the curb and gutter, all the storm sewer, all the sanitary sewer, all the water main, and spot replace the sidewalk. So these are very expensive projects. You don't get quite as much bang for your buck as far as mileage goes. For 2027, we're right now proposing roughly 4.2 miles. I think some of these will probably have to get maybe pushed out a year or so, depending on how some of these neighborhoods we've been working in and doing reconstructions on, some of those streets, some of those projects have kind of gone over on over a year. So we don't really want to be doing too many at once. So some of these streets, again, it might slip to push to 2028. But generally, we're looking at Milwaukee Street, the Maher Drexel neighborhood, another street in that, or another few streets in that neighborhood, Farwell, North South, and Anzinger. Winnemac is projects that we've been doing in our infiltration study area, studying unique ways to infiltrate water with permeable pavements. Jefferson, Oakland Grant, Evergreen Center, Willard, South Franklin, Norman, and Wood, and a new one we have proposed this year is the Carver, Martin, Dodge, Irwin neighborhood. That is due to some town of Madison parcels that annexed in and used to have their own water supply that is failing. So that one's become a bit of an urgent change to add to the program. The next program is our resurfacing program. So this is where, the base and the curb and storm sewer are still in good shape. We could just get by with a mill and overlay of the street. Sometimes we also include sanitary or water with this program, but generally it was set up to just resurface streets. We also fund a number of lower impact projects that really give us a large an area to resurface streets with our chip sealing and crack sealing and patching program. So that is areas where we'll just do, like for instance, chip seal, we'll chip seal a street, and that will lengthen the life of that street for another few years and get us by before we need a more expensive reconstruction. As far as resurfacing projects, we were looking at Junction, North Star, West Johnson, and East Johnson, the Camilla, Dolores cluster there, Colony, Millstone, East Rusk, Moreland, and Crawford. So the East Rusk and Moreland are also tied with our TAP projects that I'll talk about in a little bit as well. So that's resurfacing. So this one, again, if you look back at reconstructs, we can get about 4 miles, and this is roughly been an average about $9 or $10 million we have in this program. With resurfacing, we can chip seal 50 to 70 miles with almost the same amount of numbers. So that's, you can see that really we can, for the same amount of money, we can extend the life of so many streets. So this is a really important program. Some new projects that looking at the tool that are starting to rise to the top. This might be a little bit different than what was in the packet for the past meeting. As I mentioned, the tip is very fluid and it changes quite a bit. But some of the ones we're looking at: Westport Road, Milwaukee Street, St. Paul, Odana, Londonderry, Kennedy, Baker, Nob Hill, Iroquois, and Mineral Point Speedway area. So these are projects that I'm considering. The city is considering adding to the tip, probably near the end or somewhere in the latter couple of years. Next program I'll talk about is the Bikeways program. So Bikeways has a couple of projects lumped into it. So we always resurfaced paths that were rated at 5 or lower, and we try to keep up with that. We have a couple of small projects proposed for 2026, the Marlboro Park paths, Cap City wall repair, and the Cap City path widening at Acewood Conservancy. In 2027, we will be inspecting, actually, this is a little bit not correct. We're going to inspect the entire city of bike paths in 2026, and so we would add any new 5s in 2027. And then there's a couple other small little path projects that staff have kind of targeted for this program as well. The Dickinson Cap City path realignment to kind of align with the intersection there. And also the Cap City path in the areas that the John Nolan project wouldn't touch. We'd like to get those resurfaced as well. So one thing I'll note with our Bikeways program, unfortunately, our top bike engineer is leaving the city in July. And I don't know if all this 2026 stuff will get bid out before he leaves. So we're going to try our hardest, but some of the 26 stuff might have to slide into 2027. So that's a bit of a bummer, but you know, Aaron, I think a lot of you know, very great engineer for us, and he's out. He came here from the East Coast and is planning to move back home. So, so this is our intention. But again, I think you know, we'll have to see exactly how much we have staff capacity to get bid out in 26. The next program I'll talk about is the sidewalk program. So we try to replace the sidewalk in 2 districts a year at least. In these sidewalks are sidewalks that are like tripping hazards, they're cracked or back pitched and not draining well. So we have 2 contracts being done for districts 2 and district 6 this year. And those are already gone through their approvals and will be bidding out soon. In the upcoming years, we have District 3 and 17 next. And then we also have citywide requests throughout the city. So if someone calls in and says, you know, there's a tripping hazard here, we put that into a separate contract to replace those squares citywide. So that'll be later this summer. Bridge repair program. This is a small fund we have to kind of do small repairs to bridges so that they stay in good shape and don't need replacement. In 2026, we are working on the redecking of the Badger Road bridge, which would include a new path and sidewalk to kind of line up with the Badger Rest path and the East West path that we have planned. We'll also be epoxying the Campus Drive bridges. And right now for 2027, we have some further epoxy coating of bridge decks. So that really helps to extend the life of the bridges, keep the water off of the bridge and not filtering through and corroding the steel inside the bridges. So that's been a really good project for us to keep up with the epoxy coating. All right, now I'll jump into just some of our federally funded projects that we have in the TIP. A lot of you know John Nolan under construction right now. Will last through early summer next year. That's from Broome to Lakeside. We have phase 2 scheduled a year out in 2028 from Lakeside to Olin, and then Olin and John Nolan phase 3 scheduled out in 2029. And those are all approved and federally funded, these 3 projects. One thing we are looking at possibly doing as well is there's a stretch here that wasn't included in any of these projects. So a portion of John Nolan Drive in the northern stretch here is actually a state connecting highway. So the state's responsible for its reconstruction. We are in discussions of a possible jurisdictional transfer in this area, and which would help pay for just a quick pavement replacement in this stretch here around the terrace. So some of you might be familiar to our TE department has looked into try to change the lighting and fix the lighting underneath the terrace. They've bid that out and haven't had any luck with getting bidders. So we think pairing it with a pavement replacement project right there for that stretch would be successful. A lot of the lighting contractors, they just don't want to prime a city contract, but they're happy to be a sub. So we're looking at possibly, if that jurisdictional transfer goes through and the money for that comes in, then we might look to fund a quick pavement replacement project as well, while we have all the traffic kind of, switched over and reduced to utilize that traffic control and include that pavement replacement as well. So that is a proposal, new. Further out west, we have federal funds to replace the pavement on Mineral Point from the Beltline to High Point. That is getting let here very soon, I think in May. So that will start construction. We'll start seeing construction later this year, but that'll last into 2027 as well. The Westtown Path Phase 2, also STBG funded. This is in 2028. So that will be picking up where the Phase 2A left off at Zorshrine Place here, and extend that all the way to Gammon Road, which will complete that last missing segment of the Westtown Path. That's on track for 2028. High Point Road here is a good chunk of the High Point Road that's missing was built with the Viridian Plat recently. The last segment that's missing is from the Plat to Raymond Road, and that will be bid later this fall and be completed in the spring, summer of 2027. We also last year applied for federal funds for the Midtown Raymond Realignment Project, and we were awarded those funds. So this project is scheduled for 2031. This will be a kind of a big grading and reconstruction project. Will take us from, I think it's Waldorf, all the way over to actually Muirfield Road. So that was good news. We got the federal funds that we applied for last year on that one. Another application that we did last year, and this is actually incorrect. We applied last year, but now it is funded. Pleasant View Road, this one got awarded funds as well from Old Sauk down to Mineral Point Road, and that is scheduled in 2030. Hepker and Portage, this was shown last year as a future STBG application, and this would upgrade Portage and Hepker Road kind of in between the proposed interchange on I-39 and the hospital area. This project is a little bit, we haven't applied yet for this one because we're kind of waiting to see how the interchange shakes out. If the interchange does go in, then we would like to apply for this next year. I would think that probably the earliest it could get funded would be probably 2032 or maybe 31. So this one's a little TBD. We're kind of planning for it, but we'll know more later this year if we do make that application or not. Raywood is a future STBG application that we're proposing out in 2032. So this is the southeast side, just adjacent to the Moreland Road TAP project that we have scheduled. We'd be looking at realigning Raywood Road and reconstructing it in 2032, kind of a joint project with the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District. They have some realignment work realignment of their facilities work that would have us actually move the road into a normal T intersection instead of a curved road like that. And there's actually been some safety issues with people going a little too fast around that curve. So we'd be looking to make some safety improvements as well. So this would be a future STBG application kind of in joint with the sewerage district. I talked about this last year, but we have the 51 future projects going on. There's as Christoph just talked about, the North project, where we'll be getting a new path. We'll also be getting two new ped bike bridges over East Washington and over Highway 30 with that project. And then they're still studying the southern section from 30 down to 1218, which will have a lot of improvements as well. But that project's a little further off. So this will be constructed in the late 20s, early 30s, and then I think the southern section would follow after that. We also are working with the department on I-39 projects. They're looking at reconstructing all the way from the Beltline interchange all the way up to the Dells in a like a 20-year programmed project. So we're working with them on various parts throughout the city. There's various ped bike bridges, underpasses that we've asked for. There's two potential new interchanges that are being studied, one at the Hepker area and then one over here at Milwaukee Street. So we'll continue to work with them on those projects. So for TAP funds, these are federally funded bike projects. We have Cap City Path coming up next. That is actually, this is showing the old alignment, but the new alignment will go all the way to Vondron Road. So Vondron all the way and underneath the Interpass. That is scheduled for 2027 and seems to be moving pretty well. Knock on wood. I know this project's been delayed a few times over the years. We have the East Rust Path also next year. So that would continue where the Badger Rust Path stopped and then continue that all the way to Rimrock Road. The path on the north side of the street there, scheduled for 2027. The Moreland Path that I mentioned also scheduled for 2027. So that would go from Wayland over to Raywood Road where the Cap City Path ties in. That will be on the south side of the road, Moreland. Woodward is kind of the next one in the queue for 2028. So that would be from on Woodward Drive from kind of the Forester area down to Sheridan Drive area. That we haven't really started that design yet, but we'll be starting soon and scheduled for construction in 28. This is a new TAP funded project that was awarded to us in the past year. This is West Beltline Path. So this is the Beltline on the kind of the west side from along the Arboretum from Seminole Highway over to Landmark Trail. What we're doing there is we're gonna propose on the south side of the road to repurpose the street space and use those bike lanes for space for a new multi-use path on the south side. So that was an application last year that we went in for and were awarded. So that was good. These are future TAP or SDBG applications. So these paths here, kind of in conjunction with the 51 study and that new overpass, we want to connect the Garber path to that path system, as well as the new bridge that we built over the Autumn Ridge path over Highway 30 here. So looking to keep applying for these two path segments. We applied for them for TAP last year. I think they're a little pricey for the TAP program. So we might look to instead include them in our STBG applications, which they have a little bit more funding potential, and hoping to try to get these, built roughly in the time frame of that 51 project, so we can have that Garber path kind of connect through here all the way through the Autumn Ridge Bridge. Regent Street, you guys know all about Regent Street. We'll be reconstructing that next year from Randall to Park, maybe a little bit to the west as well. I won't spend too much time on that. You guys saw a lot of it, but we are gearing towards a 2027 construction start there. Troy Drive Railroad Bridge. We are working with the railroad to replace that bridge over Troy Drive to a standard height, clearance height, and also extend the width so that sidewalks can be built on Troy Drive on both sides of the road. So right now, we've had some good movement on this project. This has been on our tip for a while, and it's totally dependent on the railroad's coordination. And I think we're in a good place that I do think we can hopefully get started or maybe even bid the project this year and build it next year. State Street ped improvements. This was a new project on the tip from last year. We would be looking to replace sidewalks on State Street, the entire length. And then the 400 through 600 block here, this oranger section, we're looking at potential pedestrian mall improvements. So getting rid of the curbs and having more of kind of a pedestrian mall feel, like it is on a similar to the 7 and 800 blocks. So those are scheduled for 29 and 30. There's one that we've been working on forever too, the Old Middleton Craig Avenue underpass. So with our kind of progress on the Troy Drive Bridge, I've been pushing on this one as well, looking at a ped bike underpass underneath the railroad in the Craig Avenue area here to provide that ped and bike connection underneath the railroad. I actually had a really good meeting with the railroad a couple weeks ago, and I think this is actually kind of, knock on wood, looking good for next year as well. Other city projects, going on, the North-South BRT, I think will be kind of stretched over a number of years. We have the John Nolan Drive project that is kind of coordinating some of the timing, but I would see it's looking like, over the next 3 years, we'd be getting started on that and working on those, working on that project throughout the corridor in those years. Also, Safe Streets ongoing program in TE's budget that we add projects each year, and those are those will continue to keep coming to the Transportation Commission and get bid out. Okay, lastly, I'll talk real quick about how our streets are doing. So we rate our streets every 2 years, and we have goals for at what condition state they are in for local streets. So the smaller, local type streets, we have a goal of having at least 30% less than, the percent miles at or below congestion state 5 to be lower than 30%. And we've been doing really good on that over the years. We have a slight uptick this year, but still well within our goals. Collector streets, again, it's creeping back up a little bit. We went from 14.3% to 18% in 25. Our goal is at 20, keep that under 25. So we'll keep an eye on that and try to focus on those areas. And then lastly, the arterial streets. So these are like the major streets, major thoroughfares throughout the city. We have a goal of trying to keep 20% at or below 5, and we are just peaking up over that goal right now. So we'll have to again keep an eye on that and try to focus on some of those streets to keep those high thoroughfares in good condition. Let's see, paths. So we also rate our paths. And as I mentioned, we try to resurface all the paths that are at or below 5 and are currently at 1% right now with condition state 5 or below. So doing pretty good, but we'll try and get those taken care of in the next year and a half or so. So that is the end of my presentation. And like I mentioned, the TIP is in a draft status at this point. So if people have ideas for projects, we definitely welcome that. You can either contact myself or Jim or Andy or your alder, and they can contact us. Definitely we'll like to hear feedback on projects and if we're missing something. I think that's kind of the end of the presentation, and we can take questions.
Thanks, Chris. That's a lot of good things going on and planned for the future. Comments or questions for Chris? Bill.
Thanks, Ann. Chris, I always get nervous at the end of a federal authorization period, and this year is the end of the federal authorization. So have you had any discussions with WSDOT as far as what they're hearing, as far as going on in Congress, as far as future highway legislation?
Not really. It's a great question. Generally, I think, as long as I've been here, those formula funds with the SDBG and the TAP have always been pretty steady. But I haven't heard any news on any kind of new bill or anything like that.
Yeah, I know it's going through Congress, but obviously with everything else that's going on, there's always bigger fish to fry, I guess, for some of those folks. So, but like I say, I always get nervous, and I just if there's anything that we have to have, that needs to move to the top of the list, or things that potentially could slip a year or two. That's something I guess you're going to have to. It's nothing really unusual, but it's just at the end of a federal authorization period, and there's always the chance that something new will come in or a different program.
Yeah.
So that's
that's how we got the John Nolan bridges funded was the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Right.
It was, So, but like I said, the WISDOT's kind of been soliciting the ones that they awarded us last year. They're 5 years out. So
they must be comfortable that there will be a program will continue to exist. So that's good. Yeah, great job on the presentation. I think what you guys have with the program as far as your funding or your program of rating, I think is right on track. I don't see any reason to be concerned about that. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chris. Two things. I think Mineral Point at Speedway was on the list of resurfacing, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, it kind of depends on what we end up doing there. There was some talk of maybe going down to a 3-lane section, or it also depends on what the status of those pipes underneath the road are going to be when we finally scheduled it. So right now it could be resurfaced, but a lot of times the utilities turn it into a reconstruct.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's why I was wondering, because I know it was on the list maybe almost like 3-4 years ago, and then there was discussion, what should the cross-section look like? Then it was like, well, maybe we push it down the road, and I guess now it's coming back. Okay.
It's coming back, yep.
Yeah. And then for the bike path resurfacing, the bike path condition piece, so right now it's only taking pavement condition into account, but I think what I hear you say is the all ages and all abilities network will kind of augment that, where we no longer only go by surface condition, but also take into account like importance, I guess, in the network.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be really good, because I mean, there's such a difference in use levels, and on a rarely used path, maybe bad pavement condition is less of a problem than some of the I think you had Cap City near John Nolan. Yeah, so I think that's gonna be a good change. All right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Harold. Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Thanks, Chris. This was really informative. A question about a future project, the State Street pedestrian mall. Can you remind me, I'm not usually on the lower end of State Street. Can you remind me what the vehicle traffic, what's permitted down in those blocks currently?
Sure. So right now from the basically the Capitol all the way down to Lake Street is basically buses or deliveries or like permitted vehicles. So like the police or the fire, that kind of thing. So general traffic is not allowed from the 1 through 600 blocks. And the proposal would be to change that to be general traffic. So from the proposal would be from 4 to 600 block is to actually change it so that it's more of a pedestrian mall, and whether or not, right now general traffic's not allowed on there already. So I think the difference here now is that the buses don't go down those blocks anymore. So, so the idea is that we could try to turn it more into a ped mall, and then still need to figure out the whole delivery issue, and we're going to allow the delivery trucks to continue to go down there. I would imagine there'd be a large pressure for us to do so, but maybe we do that in maybe there's a couple hours that are allowed to do that and then they're not allowed the other hours to be on there. So that kind of stuff we'll need to figure out as far as access. But kind of the concept for this would be the 400 through 600 blocks. So Gorham through Lake Street, we'd get rid of the curbs, make it more of a pedestrian mall. And then the 1 through 300 block would just be basically sidewalk repair, and it would stay the way it is.
Okay, that's super helpful. A lot of the questions that I had are on your mind already. Like, what do you do about delivery vehicles? And I don't know what would happen with cabs and TNCs. I was thinking about with the removal of curbs, those are such important guides for, people with certain disabilities, particularly vision loss. And if those are gone, then just thinking about the conflict of pedestrians and delivery vehicles. So sounds like there's still lots of thinking to do, but that concept I think is really cool to make it more like library malls. So thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Denise. Alder Harrington McKinney, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for a very informed presentation. And I am needing to probably schedule an appointment to come in and have a conversation with my major concerns still being South Whitney Way, at Beltline, off-ramp, Schroeder. Those are major concerns. I was over there and there's a couple of near misses that just happened that I was involved in this week. So I'd really like to have a conversation related to that. And so I'm very mindful of Chris's admission of our meeting time. So I'd like to schedule an appointment to really talk about that section there and to see what future plans that there are for that specific area. So thank you, I'm complete.
Okay, I'll reach out offline here, set that up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alder. Anybody have any other comments or questions for Chris? Well, thanks so much, Chris. There's a couple in my neighborhood that I'm really looking forward to. So
yes.
Yeah,
All right. Thanks,
okay.
everyone. Thanks, and like I said, we'll keep working on that, and we'll be submitting our budget request to the mayor in mid-April.
That sounds good. Thanks so much, Chris. A lot of great work going on. Okay, next we have Kevin and Yang with the federal grant projects update of a lot of things, a lot of information here, and a lot of update to cover. So Yang or Kevin, who's going to start off?
I would just quickly kind of inform the commission that we're trying to bring a series of updates to you for the many federal funded grant projects we're working on. So this is the first of it, and thank you to Kevin for leading quite a few important projects for us. And I will ask Kevin to give an update on quite a few important projects. Thank you, Kevin.
Great. Thanks, Yang. Good evening, everyone. Here, as Yang said, to give an update on 3 of our federally funded planning projects that we're doing right now. I have a lot of slides in here with a lot of information that I'm going to run through very quickly, but I also include some links as to where you can find some more information on these. I want to be mindful of everybody's time while still providing you with some information on things we've been working on. So we currently have...
Kevin, before you start, can I just ask how you'd like to approach this? You've got 3 different updates here. Do you want to pause after each one for questions and comments, or do you want to everybody to hold those till we get to the very end?
Why don't we pause after each one? That will probably be easier, just to keep comments focused on what I've just talked about.
Then when you get there, why don't you just pause, and then we'll get comments and questions on that section and then move on to the next.
Great, thank you. So we currently have two large federal grants that are funding a variety of planning efforts that we're doing. We have a fiscal year 2022 Safe Streets and Roads for All grant that we are using to produce an update of our pedestrian plan and our All Ages and Abilities Bicycle Network Plan, in addition to allowing staff to do some Safe Routes to School planning. We also have a Transportation Alternatives Program grant from WSDOT that is funding a Safe Routes to School plan. So I'll be touching on all of those items here this evening. I'm going to start with the pedestrian plan. I'll note that this effort is being done in coordination with the bike network updates. So much of the analysis that I talk about as part of the pedestrian plan is also relevant to the bike pieces that I'll talk about a little bit further along. So this is an update to our 1997 pedestrian plan, quite dated at this point, with much of it having been completed or not relevant for various reasons anymore. The plan itself will provide a summary of existing conditions of our walking network throughout the city. It will provide policy recommendations, programmatic recommendations, and then infrastructure recommendations and prioritization. So I'll give an overview of some of the analysis work that we've done as part of this, and then an overview of what the plan will look like without kind of getting into the plan details, and then touch on timelines so that you can see when the full draft plan will be available for review. So this plan really builds on past work that we've done. Probably the key piece of this is the Complete Green Streets Guide, which was developed in 22 and 23 and updated in 25, which developed a modal hierarchy for our streets, placing pedestrians at the top, which has really guided our policies and our decision making and what will be in this plan. It also builds on a lot of good work that the city has done over the years. We have done a lot to make pedestrian travel safer, more comfortable, more accessible, and more attractive for people. We recognize that there's still work to be done, but at this point, sidewalks are built by default with street projects and infilled as budgets allowed. The majority of our Safe Streets Madison projects focus on pedestrian safety. Pedestrian safety and access are considered in all of our street design work. So all of the things that Chris just talked about, we'll be looking at the pedestrian piece for each one of those. Traffic signals are frequently set up in time to benefit pedestrians. Sidewalks are regularly inspected for accessibility. We do a pretty good job with snow removal. Having just had the blizzard this week, I know that there's room for improvement there, but as far as many cities that I've lived in, Madison is far and away the best on getting our sidewalks cleared in a reasonable time. Our planning effort has listened to the public. We've gotten out with a fairly focused public engagement effort that has included interviews with a number of different people in different groups, an online survey that was conducted near the beginning of the planning process. We did tabling at community centers, some libraries, Parks Alive events, and a few other events, and then carried out a focus group with women and youth to talk to them about their concerns with walking and pedestrian safety and access in the city. I'll give a quick overview of existing conditions and some of the analysis work that we've done before talking a little bit more about the plan specifically. So in thinking about the number of people that are walking in the city, we don't have great data on this. It's hard to track, but some of the data sources that we do have come from the Census Bureau and from big data. The Census Bureau indicates that approximately 11% of people in Madison walk or bike to work on a regular basis. Again, that's a combination of walking and biking. You can see in the chart on the right that there's been some fall off even before the pandemic, but after the pandemic, walking and biking to work has continued to fall a little bit as more and more people have been able to work remotely from home. Replica, which is a big data source, estimates that about 15% of all trips in Madison are made on foot. So that includes trips to the park, to the library, to work, restaurants, whatever it may be. About 15% of our trips citywide occur on foot, which is a fairly substantial portion. We have a lot of sidewalks throughout the city. We've done a pretty good job in building out our sidewalk network. In looking at all of our streets, about 65% of them have sidewalks on both sides of the street. Another 14% or so have sidewalks on one side. But about 22% of our city streets still don't have sidewalks on them at all. And in some cases, those are just sporadic here and there. There's topographic issues or other reasons why they don't occur in some areas, particularly some of the post-war development that occurred. There are larger neighborhoods that lack sidewalks overall. And more recently, some of the areas that have been annexed into the city from town of Madison and other areas lack sidewalk coverage. We've done a lot of work to enhance pedestrian crossings throughout the city. The map here shows the location. The yellow diamonds on the map are where we have installed rapid flash beacons to assist pedestrians with crossing. The black squares on the map are where we have median islands, curb bump outs, or raised crossings. Again, efforts to really try to improve driver yielding behavior to pedestrians at uncontrolled locations and improve some of that safety and comfort of pedestrians as they cross some of our busier streets and roadways. We looked a bit at trip potential. So this looks at identifying areas where walking and biking activity is currently high or would be high if there were safer places to walk or bike and there were better connections or facilities available. So this may feed into some of our prioritization for projects down the road as we talk about how we use our limited resources for expanding the pedestrian network. We looked at a variety of different factors based on population density, job density, urban form, where the street grid is a better grid that encourages more walking, more biking, transit access, destinations, education locations, and general mobility. So where short trips are occurring. And for that, we define that as trips of under 2 miles in length that could perhaps be easy walking or biking trips if facilities are available. We have individual maps that are available or will be available as part of the plan of each of those different factors. But what we came up with is a composite map that shows areas of high walking and biking trip potential. And as expected, downtown really jumps out and parts of the Near East Side and Near West Side. Those are areas where we have a lot of walking and biking occurring now. But there's also areas of the city that started to pop out that you don't think of as traditional areas for walking and biking. The Westtown Mall area has high potential. South Park Street corridor, very high potential overall. Some areas off of Stoughton Road at Cottage Grove, North Sherman Avenue, and out on the far northeast side of town. So a variety of different areas where we might not traditionally think of those as being areas for walking and biking, but we believe that there's strong potential for there to be more active transportation in those areas. We also looked at what's known as pedestrian crossing level of traffic stress. So this looks at how stressful it is for people to cross street intersections. It's a 4-point scale with 1 and 2 representing low stress, where those intersections are relatively easy to cross the street. It's not particularly stressful. To 3 and 4, which are higher stress situations, more lanes of traffic to cross, higher speed traffic, a variety of other factors that make it challenging for people to cross the street. The map here, and again, we'll have all of these maps will be in the plan as well as in standalone documents, only shows the high stress crossing. So we analyzed every intersection in the city to look at the stress of those crossings. And what's shown here are ones that were rated as a 3 or a 4. So these are our stressful crossings. Not surprisingly, they tend to be our arterial streets: East Washington, Mineral Point, University Park, Fish Hatchery, a variety of different streets throughout the city, where people again have to cross busier streets, lots of traffic, higher speed traffic. And these streets really serve as barriers to walk in throughout the city. They make it challenging. Even if you can walk around your own neighborhood well, you may not be able to comfortably or safely get to a destination that's on the other side of the street from you because you don't feel comfortable crossing the street at that location. I'll note that these crossing locations, these were analyzed for pedestrian stress, but they're also likely locations that are stressful to cross as a bicyclist. And what these lead to in many cases are excessive distances between low stress crossings. The map here shows the distance along different streets that you would have to go to get to a low stress crossing. And it ranges from kind of the light orange color, which is 1/8 of a mile to 1/4 mile between low stress crossings, up to the dark black lines, which is a mile or more between low stress crossings. So we've got some corridors where you may have to go a significant distance to be able to cross at a more comfortable crossing. We also looked at pedestrian access throughout the city to get to a variety of different destinations. And what this does is it looks for the presence of sidewalks and the stress of crossings. And we looked at a distance of 1/2 mile around key destinations throughout the city. We looked at elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, libraries and community centers, grocery stores. There's a few others. I don't have them all right now, but analyzed how easy it is for people to be able to walk to those from a distance of 1/2 mile away. And I'll show one map example here. This is around elementary schools. And what this shows, the shaded streets are streets that are within a 1/2 mile walk of the school. The dark brown lines are connections that can be made that exist in low stress access to get to those destinations, whereas yellow lines are areas that are within the 1/2 mile but do not have low stress access. And that could be either because they're lacking a sidewalk or because you have to cross a busy street to get to that destination. So for example, if we were to look at Isthmus Montessori School, which was mentioned in the signal discussion earlier, that's alongside Packers Avenue, there are sidewalks throughout most of the neighborhood here. However, most of the 1/2 mile access to the school is shown as not accessible because you have to cross Packers Avenue, which is high stress crossings. In contrast to that, if you look at the area around Nuestro Mundo School, there are very few streets that show as having a low stress connection to the school. And for the most part, that's because many of the streets in the neighborhood here lack sidewalks altogether. So to access the school, you're walking in the street or you're not walking at all to get there. So we did this for a variety of different destinations to be able to see how easily people can walk to those should they choose to. The key takeaways from the different analyses that we did is that there's significant potential and likely latent demand for walking in areas that have not historically been considered hotspots for active transportation. The city has sidewalks on most of our streets, but there are exceptions, including some of our post-1940s neighborhoods and some of the areas that have been more recently annexed into the city. And although only about 12% of crossings in Madison are high stress, lengthy gaps between comfortable crossings on those major arterials really reduce walkability to key destinations throughout much of the city. So what we're planning to come out of this. First, we have a draft vision, and that is that Madison will be a city where walking and rolling are easy, safe, and inviting for everyone, no matter their age, ability, identity, or neighborhood. Walking will be a common and valued way to get around, supported by well-connected walkways, safe crossings, and vibrant public spaces. Sidewalks and paths will link homes, schools, parks, and jobs, helping all communities thrive and stay connected. I'll note that the plan, I think on the very first page of the plan, notes that although we use the word walking throughout the document, it's meant to be inclusive and includes people who are using wheelchairs or other mobility aids to get around. It also includes people who are using low-speed, non-electric devices such as skateboards or roller skates on city streets, devices that typically travel at kind of a walking to jogging speed, but not faster e-devices or regular bicycles. The plan lays out 4 draft goals that guide the different chapters of the plan. First is safe, ensure that walking and rolling are safe for all users. Comfortable, provide places to walk and roll that are comfortable, low stress, and accessible. Convenient, build continuous interconnected pedestrian networks that easily get people to their daily destinations, and enjoyable. Create places to walk and roll that are welcoming and interesting, ensuring that everyone feels that they belong and are legitimate users of the transportation system. Not called out here because of our funding source is equity. We have threaded equity throughout our recommendations, throughout our goals, throughout our vision. But because of our federal funding source right now, we can't explicitly say that as part of the plan document. But we have really worked to make sure that that really does guide the different actions that are recommended within the plan, and that we're addressing all areas of the city to make sure that everybody has access to safe and accessible walk-in areas. As I just mentioned, the chapters within the plan are structured around the 4 goals. Each chapter has kind of an introduction, objectives, and lays out some measures and targets. It talks about existing conditions, including the different analyses that I just covered, but provided much more detail. And then there are specific strategies and actions that are called out, along with who would be responsible, or which city department or other partner agency might be responsible for carrying those out. I gave an example here of some of the measures or targets that might be included. I'll note that there's when I copied this over, there were still a lot of not applicables or TBDs. These will be filled out by the time we have the draft plan that's ready to go. The plan will also help provide staff with some project prioritization. This gets a bit at what Chris was just talking about. This will not be included within the plan document itself, but we are rating different sidewalk gaps and different crossing locations throughout the city on a prioritization scale to help staff make decisions when we are looking at the TIP, or if we have grant or other standalone money to help make improvements to the walk-in network throughout the city. So our timeline for the pedestrian plan, in just a couple of weeks here, we will be releasing a draft plan for public review. It will be posted on the city website, along with a variety of communications going out to highlight that. On Tuesday, April 7th, we will be hosting a virtual public information meeting that will provide an overview of the plan, as well as a Q&A time. And we'll be highlighting at that time how people can comment on the plan, review it, and provide feedback that they have. Monday, April 27th, public comment period will close, and in May, we'll be going through all of the comments that we have received and making any necessary revisions to the plan to address those. We'll be coming back to you sometime likely over the summer, looking for plan adoption. We'll come to council, and I'm sure I will be back here before you speaking about it as it works its way through the revision process. There is a link that is included in the slides to the pedestrian plan website that includes an existing conditions summary document, as well as an engagement summary document that provides much more detail on many of the things that I've just covered. So before we get into the Bikeways network, I'll pause there and see if anybody has any questions or discussion.
Robbie, go ahead. Yeah, just very quickly, I really appreciate the idea of the potential for walking and analyzing difficult crossings and intersections that that might deter people from walking. I think that's just, a fabulous idea. And I noticed, looking at the bike plan, that there wasn't the same thing. And specifically, I'm looking at some of the crossings of some of our larger highways, like the Beltline and things like that, where there's lots of ramps, which make it really scary to bike along that road. So I'm just preemptively suggesting that maybe that kind of analysis also be done for the bike plan, because I think it really is what keeps people from both walking and biking are some of those difficult crossings. So I'm really glad to see it in the pedestrian plan. I'm hoping we'll see it in the bike plan as well.
Yep. So I'll just note that the the potential analysis applies to both walking and biking. For that work that was done, we used a couple of different distance thresholds. I'd have to look back at what they were, but I think it was probably a mile for walking and 3 miles for biking. I suspect to look at some of the potential for those things. The pedestrian crossing stress serves as a good proxy for the bike crossing stress. They're not exactly the same, and there are some differences, but that is something that we are considering as well as part of that. But thank you for flagging both of those. Those are key issues for getting more people walking and biking.
Thanks.
Thanks, Robbie. Alder Okovich, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Two things. One, do you think a month it's less than a month is enough time for public comment? Did you consider extending that?
I think it's more than enough time, actually. The plan will be posted for, I think it's actually just a 3-week window. We had some debate on if it should be 2, if it should be 4. We landed on 3. We'll be again, hosting the public meeting and posting that meeting online as well, and doing some social media and other email and other media blasts to let people know about the opportunity for review. If we see a real strong response that's continuing towards the end of the period, we can always extend further. Okay. As you'll see, as I go through the timelines for the other plans, you'll see we've got a lot of overlapping pieces kind of all coming together here and in a bit of an extravaganza of active transportation planning. So some of that was part of the consideration as well.
That's fair. There's also downtown plan, DMI's economic development plan. There's a lot of planning going on.
A lot going on.
My second point/question would be, it would be good if you could make your maps available either as, some standardized file. I know you talked about like the, like you're showing the walking, I don't even know what the right word is, walking well or whatever for the schools. But showing those other maps, but also just making them available for people to do some analysis on, because I think it's very interesting.
Okay. We can take a look at that and see.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Alder. Harlan, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, along those lines, I think also, and this might already be something that you're doing for the feedback process, like I found myself squinting a little bit and like, is this Park Street, is this Fisher? So like having an interactive map that you can zoom in and actually see the details for a citywide map, I think is important to be able to give good feedback. The other piece I was wondering about is, did you consider taking into account something like the impact of climate change, heat stress, noise exposure, air pollution, when thinking about like, where is it? I mean, walking comfort is one of the categories. And I feel like, it's the winter right now, but if you walk somewhere next to a highway exposed to the sun, there's a lot of noise. I feel like that is an important dimension. I don't want to blow this up too much, but I did want to bring this up as a potential piece of what it means to have a safe and comfortable biking environment, walking environment.
Yeah, that's a great point. That did not factor into our analysis. We do have access to kind of tree coverage and things like that through the city, but it does factor into some of our recommendations. So we do have recommendations that are focused on specifically on providing shade in specific areas, whether that's through tree coverage or through synthetic means. You could think of like a small sitting area where a path and a street come together that has a sail or something above it. So that did factor into our recommendations. I think we're very cognizant that our summers are going to continue to get hotter, and nobody likes walking in the blazing sun. And so that was certainly a piece that did factor in and is covered in some of our recommendations.
All right, I really appreciate that. And maybe access to like public water fountains, that might be another component of this. Thank you, that's all I had, very exciting.
Any other comments or questions? I have one question or comment for you, Kevin. You talk about the project prioritization tools for this section for the pedestrian plan. I assume you're working with the folks with Tom and Yang on the prioritization tool for Safe Streets Madison to coordinate that?
Yes, we haven't quite figured out how that will fold in yet, but that has certainly been front of mind for us. And that will also factor in, I'll circle back on that when we discuss the Safe Routes to School plan in a moment, because that directly factors into many of the recommendations coming out of the Safe Routes to School plan, which are primarily pedestrian recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely, because we're going to be looking at the Safe Streets Madison prioritization tool, and it would make a lot of sense to have all of these things coordinated and aligned, so we're all heading in the same direction.
Yep, agree.
Okay. Other comments or questions on this, the pedestrian plan? Great work, Kevin. Let's move on to biking then.
Okay. The next couple pieces will be a little bit briefer, hopefully, because I'm not talking quite as much about analysis in these pieces. So another piece also funded through the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant is our All Ages and Abilities Bicycle Network Plan. This is a priority network of paths and low stress on-street bikeways that will provide an enhanced level of comfort for biking and micromobility use throughout the city. The network is, and I want to be clear on this, it's a long-term vision for a backbone network throughout the city. It will come to be over time. It will take time to implement, but this provides a vision for providing a low-stress bikeway network that connects all parts of the city. The network is low stress and high comfort routes that provide connections to key destinations and will help provide a framework for prioritization. Again, what Chris talked about, how we do some of the prioritization for the tip. The network is not the only places where bikeways are or will be. So there are streets in the city that will have bicycle facilities on them that are not part of the network. Those are still great places to ride bikes. Most of our neighborhood streets are good, low stress places to bike. They are not all a part of the network. And so the network is also not the only places that are all ages and abilities friendly. The network is also not design specific. Again, at this point, it is purely a network map. As projects come up, specific designs will be evaluated at that time as to what is needed to provide an all ages and abilities bikeway, and what is feasible within the project. And again, just stressing back to the first bullet that the network is not instantaneous. It's going to take time to implement and roll out. So looking at some of our existing conditions around the city today, we've got a pretty extensive bikeway network that's been developed over many decades. We've got about 150 miles of bike lanes on streets, about 3 miles of protected bike lanes, which is a somewhat newer facility type for us, about 5 miles of bike boulevards dispersed throughout the city, and about 115 miles of shared use paths, which are slowly getting knitted together over time. Similar to the pedestrian level of crossing stress that I talked about earlier, we looked at bicycle level of traffic stress. I believe that many of you are familiar with this from analysis that the MPO has done on our street network. Streets are rated from 1 through 4 on a stress level, with 1 and 2 generally being considered low stress, good for most people to bike on. 3 and 4 being considered hot, medium, and high stress. Not great for most people to bike on. 3 is kind of there are many people who will bike on those streets, but again, not considered an all ages and abilities level of stress. So what we see, again, similar to the pedestrian map, I'm only showing the high stress streets here. Not surprisingly, again, it's mostly our arterial system, many of our collector streets as well. But throughout the city, we see busier streets with higher speeds and higher traffic volumes that aren't great for biking on and will dissuade many people from making trips on bikes. Again, biking along these streets is stressful, but also biking across these streets is often stressful. And so that really breaks up the ability to get around town in many places on a bicycle. As I mentioned earlier, and in response to Robbie's question, many of the analyses that apply to the walking piece also apply to the bike piece, so I'm not going to jump into those right now. So what we're planning here, what we're planning for, again, is that level of stress 1 and 2, low stress bikeways. They can be paths, they can be on-street facilities, but they need to provide enough separation from motor vehicles or have very low traffic streets or very low speed streets that they are comfortable for the vast majority of people to bike on. The original all ages and abilities bikeways network was laid out in the 2023 Complete Green Streets Guide. It was considered kind of a draft at that point that was put together with that guide, but wasn't a key focus of the guide. It's shown here in the blue lines. And what we've done through the various analysis pieces here and looking at destinations and some of our engagement work is we've added and removed from that original network. So the blue lines, again, are that original 2023 network that was laid out. Green lines are additions to the network that we are proposing as part of the map right now. Red lines are removals. The majority of the removals shown are outside of the city proper. We still show a few pieces outside of the city that are key connections, like the Cap City Trail as it runs through Fitchburg, or a variety of other connections into Middleton and a few other areas. And in those areas, we have coordinated with surrounding municipalities to look at what their current plans show and where they want their connections. There are a few small removals within the city. I will note that some of these show up as removals, even though there is actually another facility there. University Avenue is one that jumps out. We are not recommending University Avenue. I think there are overlapping lines that show at this scale, which is part of the issue. So what this results in is this network. It is denser than the 2023 network. It provides greater connectivity into many of our neighborhoods. It includes some new path connections that weren't planned at that time, a variety of different pieces. So as you can see, pretty extensive backbone network throughout most or all of the city. This network is in various stages of completion already right now. So as we look at the network and we look at the level of stress on the network, lines that are shown in blue right now are parts of the network that already meet all ages and abilities criteria. So the blue lines would be considered streets or paths that are currently good for biking for the vast majority of the population. There may be stressful crossings as part of these, and that is not shown on the map here. I do want to note that crossings can still be problematic in some of these areas, but a decent portion of the network is already built out as all ages and abilities. The yellow orangish line shown here are parts of the network that have a bikeway, but that bike facility does not meet all ages and abilities criteria. So if you think about things like bike lanes on Johnson and Gorham or bike lanes on Old Sauk Road, primarily standard bike lanes on busier streets or higher speed streets. Those are ones that are shown in orange here. There is a bike facility present. It doesn't meet all ages and abilities criteria. And then there's the red piece. These are pieces of the network that do not currently have any bicycle facility. These could be streets that just don't have a bike facility on them, or they could be paths that have not yet been built. We'll have a variety of ways to represent this map. So you can see right now it is not differentiating between streets and paths in any of the maps that I've shown you. It just says, is this all ages and abilities or is it not? And we will also have maps that show if it's a street facility or if it's a path facility that goes with it. So similar timeline for rolling this out. This is going to follow the pedestrian plan by about 2 weeks. The plan will be, the current tentative plan is to release the map with a brief explanatory document on April 20th. There again will be a brief public meeting to talk about what the network plan is, answer any questions and answers, and give people information on how they can comment on the plan. Again, we've got the plan open until May 11th, 3-week period again. May through June, we'll be making revisions based on comments, and again, summer out to council and back to you for adoption. I will note that this one specifically, the way that we are soliciting comments on this is through an interactive map, so people can zoom in as close as they want to see where things exist or where they don't. I did already get 2 emails from people looking at today's agenda and squinting at the maps that are provided in this PowerPoint with comments on, what are you doing on this street? Why isn't this street here? What about this street? So I anticipate a fairly robust conversation around this network. So I'll pause here for any questions or discussion about the all ages and abilities bike network plan.
Comments or questions for Kevin? Harold.
Thank you. So right, this one is different than the walking plan in that it is not a bike plan, but it is a AAA bike network plan. So that's why it doesn't have like the vision, it doesn't have the metrics, it doesn't have the implementation timeline, because I guess the assumption is, where does that piece happen for the network plan?
Yeah, so you're correct. This is simply a network plan that lays out a vision for what biking will be. We do not have a kind of traditional bike plan in the sense that we will have the pedestrian plan that lays out some of those same metrics for tracking this. That said, the primary metric for tracking this will be percent of the network that essentially the map that I just showed you, but in numbers form, percent of the network that is implemented as all ages and abilities, percent that is implemented but not all ages and abilities, and percent that has not been implemented. As far as prioritization and work to do those things, there is not a dedicated funding source for implementing the bikeway network. These projects are implemented through grants that we pursue or through street projects typically that we pursue. It is certainly possible down the road that we could have some funding more specifically dedicated to some of these pieces, but right now it will tend to come about piecemeal through other projects that are occurring. We are getting some prioritization tools and metrics from our consultant as part of this that again will feed into some of those processes such as development of the TIP or how we look at what we want to apply for TAP applications or other sorts of things with it.
Yeah, thanks. I think that makes sense in the short term. I mean, and then maybe looking at the people at the alders on the committee, like down the road. I mean, I think, plans are great. They will inform a lot of stuff, but if there's not that additional, understanding, like, okay, if we want to get to 30% completion of our AAA network, what would that take in terms of budget, in terms of planning capacity, in terms of impacts, then I think there's a certain risk that we have a plan and we kind of continue what we've been doing already. We're like, oh yeah, here's a funding opportunity. Let's build that unless there's too much. Yeah. So I think it would be good to think about, like, is there a logical next step that helps us actually do something with the plan and make it a reality. But I think having this piece in place is necessary and great, and it's been missing, and it's so much better than what we've had before. So thank you.
Thanks.
Are there other comments or questions? I do have one, Kevin. In the Complete Green Streets Guide, the Transportation Commission has the authority to approve final updated all ages and abilities bike network or changes to the all ages and abilities bike network without going to the Common Council. So how does that fit in with what you're talking about here?
Well, that is a good question that I will perhaps have to circle back with Yang on to see what our adoption process for this is. It may be, maybe it will be briefer and we'll just come back to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind you of that so that, you know, we can be, the council authorized us through Complete Green Streets to have the ability to approve changes to the all ages and abilities bike network. So just wanted to try and keep things as efficient as we can.
I appreciate that.
Yang, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Anne, for bringing it up. Yeah, that is a good point. That was specified in the TC ordinance, so that's true. So our original thought is that we will have a consistent process for this, as with the other plans. But we'll look into that. We'll see whether we should just strive for that efficiency, or maybe value a more consistent process, even though taking this part to the council is not totally required by the ordinance. Sure. So thank you.
Yeah, no,
Christoph has his hands up as well. Yeah, he probably have some thoughts to share as well.
Sure, and planning, transportation plans are, certainly do go to the council. So I was just curious how that was going to work together. Go ahead, Christoph.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think part of our intent here is there's first a plan adopted, and then there will be regular revisions to it adopted as projects happen, as decisions get made, as area planning happens. So I definitely would not want to take all of those updates every time there is an update to Common Council. I think the decision to be made is whether there is value in having the initial plan approved by Common Council, simply to have that vote behind it as, here is the citywide commitment that this is our plan and this is how we do things. So sure, I think that's always a consideration with something like this.
Sure, and with the federal funding, there's accountability as well. So I just wanted to keep that in mind so that, as I said, we can be as efficient as possible, but we also want to be as transparent as possible. So I understand that. Just curious how it was going to work together. Other comments or questions? Okay. Go ahead, Kevin.
All right. Last piece, Safe Routes to School planning. So we have two distinct but connected Safe Routes to School planning efforts underway. The first is a consultant-led Safe Routes to School plan and planning effort. For this effort, we're partnered with Madison Metropolitan School District and the Wisconsin Bike Fed to produce a strategic plan, review the school district's unusually hazardous transportation areas, and produce 23 school-specific safe routes to school plans. That portion of the work that we're doing is TAP funded. After we began that process, we also were awarded additional we were able to use some of our Safe Streets for All money to do an additional 9 school-specific Safe Routes to School plans. Those are being led by staff, so those, I'll get into those further in the presentation, but those build on what we were doing through our consultant-led work, and so they're distinct processes, but all connected in the end. So the first piece of the Safe Routes to School planning that's going on is district-wide planning. This will lead to a strategic plan, a Safe Routes to School strategic plan, focused on making walking and biking to school more comfortable and attractive for students and caregivers. I'll note that this plan also focuses on busing some. There is a large portion of our student body across the city who can't walk or bike to school because they're too far or whatever other reasons. And we want to try to make busing as an attractive an option for them as well. It reduces traffic around our schools. It provides social time for the kids. There's a variety of benefits to busing rather than caregivers driving parents. So I primarily talk about walking and biking here, but busing is a key piece of this as well. The strategic plan will have recommendations for MMSD and for the city to implement. I will note that coming out of the strategic plan, probably the most impactful recommendations really fall to MMSD for some policy and programmatic changes for them to make. There are things for the city to do, but really it is for MMSD to lead in many of the areas with that. We are also taking a look and producing a new standardized, unusually hazardous transportation scoring criteria. So you may be familiar with this, but the city provides busing for elementary school students and middle school students outside of 1.5 miles from the school. So within 1.5 miles, they're supposed to walk. However, there are what are known as unusually hazardous transportation areas, which have been deemed as particularly hazardous, and the school district can provide busing to those areas. And so if you think about crossing a major arterial, that kids on the far side of that arterial from the school, that may be a UHT area. The district's UHT areas have been developed over decades. They are haphazard, not consistent. You may see a street that is a UHT for one school, but not for another, a variety of different things. So we have produced, working with our consultant, a new standardized methodology that the district will be using to revise their UHT areas that may result in changes to the walk-in and bus-in areas throughout the district. We're also doing a crossing guard review, location review. This is just a high-level data analysis that looks at locations that might meet standards for providing a crossing guard. This is not being included in the plan and will not result in any new guard, in any changes to our current guard placements. It is simply a tool that when we do get requests for guards, it's one of the pieces that we can look at on if a guard may be warranted at a specific location or not. The vision coming out of the plan is that more Madison students and their families will walk, bike, and take the bus to school safely, comfortably, and enjoyably. The plan is structured really around kind of a core goal of providing a sustainable and equitable program. It's focused around safe streets, safe campuses, safe behaviors, and supportive culture. And the different recommendations throughout the plan fall into these 4 chapters. There's also an additional chapter at the beginning that provides kind of an intro and benefits to Safe Routes to School. As I noted, the recommendations are primarily for the city and for MMSD to carry out. There are a few for other partners, but mostly the city and MMSD. There are some policy updates, particularly on MMSD's side, although some recommendations on site plan review for school sites and things like that on the city's end. There are programmatic recommendations, there are some infrastructure recommendations, and then there are some performance measures throughout the document. The other key piece of all of this are school plans that we're developing. And the schools, what we did for this is we prioritized all of the schools in the city, the public schools, on a variety of metrics. Looking at students nearby, we wanted to focus on schools where there is a lot of potential for walking and biking to school. We looked at some equity factors, socioeconomic factors, and proximity to major streets. And based on all of those, the schools were prioritized and ranked. And then based on that, we selected schools for the consultant team to lead school-specific Safe Routes to School plans for, and then for staff to develop plans. That covers 32 schools overall. I believe there's 50 schools altogether. It is our goal within TE to continue to work on staff-led plans as time allows over the next couple of years so that we wind up with plans for each one of the schools. So you can see on the map here the locations of different schools and kind of who's leading those or if they're not being planned for at this time. The school-specific plans have two components, the first of which is a travel brochure. This is a 2-page document. Many of the schools have travel plans posted on their web pages, but many don't. Many of them are old and appear to have been photocopied or even mimeographed repeatedly over the years. So this provides a 2-page document that the schools can host on their websites. For students and their caregivers, it shows safe arrival and departure information, including where buses go, where parents dropping off in cars should go, walking and biking things, provides information about crossing guard locations, where bike parking is located, a variety of different things. The back side of the sheet has some school-specific as well as general district-wide information about school transportation, safe travel, and a variety of other things. So this will be a consistent design across all of the schools that we're planning for. It will look the same whether you go and look at a plan for Lapham or Hawthorne or Anana, regardless of which school you're looking at. Each school is also getting what we're calling a Safe Routes to School plan. This is primarily an infrastructure plan. They are brief plans targeted at the city, MMSD, and the Bike Fed to carry out. They highlight issues in the immediate vicinity of the school to look at. So it looks at issues on the school campuses, which could relate to sidewalks, paths, driveways, bike parking, a variety of other things, as well as things on city streets in the, again, kind of immediate vicinity, generally anywhere from 3 to 5 blocks from the school, although in some cases, particularly some of the middle schools, we have some recommendations that may be slightly farther afield than that. The recommendations are based on field reviews that we did at the schools. We met with principals or their staff at each schools and did site assessments in the neighborhoods, walking around and looking at things. Each plan makes recommendations for short-term and long-term improvements. I've got an example here that shows kind of how things break down by recommendations based on timelines for immediate priority or short-term, medium-term, long-term, and then identifies who's responsible for carrying things out, whether it's leadership at individual schools, City of Madison, things like this. So at the end of the day, we're going to have 32 separate school plans that have recommendations for making improvements to benefit walking and biking around the schools. I'll circle back on that just for a moment because it gets at Anne's question from earlier about prioritization. It is our plan right now, and this will be coming to you, I think, at the next meeting as we talk about Safe Streets Madison project prioritization, to take infrastructure recommendations that are included in these plans and add them into the Safe Streets Madison project list. There will be some scoring of that to identify them as this is a Safe Routes to School related project and some prioritization related to that. I'm not going to get into that discussion. That's coming in a few weeks. But that will help provide an actual implementation channel and funding to begin to implement the different recommendations that are a part of this plan, these plans. Timeline for this one comes 2 weeks after the bike plan for public release. Again, public meeting, plan overview, Q&A, public comment period will close, and then plan revisions and adoption will occur. I will note that this public review is simply for the strategic plan, the district-wide strategic plan. It is not for the individual school plans. There has been separate engagement through different school channels for review and comment on the different school plans that are going on. So this is purely on the strategic plan for the district level. And with that, I'll take any questions you have on Safe Routes to School planning, and then my part can wrap up.
Comments or questions for Kevin on Safe Routes to School? Harold, go ahead.
Thank you. Great work. Very exciting. Plan adoption is that going to be the Common Council? Is it TC? Is it going to be the school board? All of the above?
I believe Common Council, which would come through TC then. This is not something because although we're going to feed many of these projects through Safe Streets Madison, most likely, it is not purely a Safe Streets Madison project. So I believe full council for this one. School board, I believe MMSD is still in some discussions as to what happens on that end. I would like to see the district fully adopt it, obviously, to ensure buy-in on their end. I will note that we have had more buy-in from some of their staff and people involved and engaged in this project than we have in more recent years from the district, which I have seen as promising, but certainly adopting the plan would show a higher level.
Right, especially since so many recommendations will be implemented by the schools and the school district. I think that would be great. All right, thank you.
Other comments or questions for Kevin? Just fantastic work, Kevin. So much good work. Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Ann. Kevin, this is really exciting. So thank you. I'm really like I'm really tickled. So this is a bigger question for any of the plans. But I'm particularly thinking of the PED one and all the maps. I mean, all those heat maps, there's a lot of data there, which is really exciting. And it won't be accessible for some of the population who will really want to know that information. So I know there was some conversation about, increasing the size of the maps, but, for many people who are blind or low vision, maps are anywhere from difficult to impossible to manage, and similar for folks with learning disabilities and intellectual disabilities. Interpreting maps is really difficult. So constituencies who are typically pedestrians lose really critical access to information. And we certainly saw it with the Madison Metro network redesign. People just couldn't access the maps. So one of the things I want to ask you to think about, and I'm happy to have an offline conversation, but I just want to put this out publicly so others are aware of it. I'm happy to have an offline conversation about how we might create an avenue for people to get questions addressed. Just kind of how do we make sure people have a level playing field for access to information?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Denise, and we have discussed that some. The maps that I showed today will look different in the pedestrian plan. I actually just got a draft, and frankly, they're not as pretty, but they meet their higher contrast and do a better job of meeting some of the standards for color blindness and some of those things. I do think that providing standalone larger format maps that can be zoomed to high level will be useful, but I will also connect with you on other ways that we can provide channels for people to get questions addressed. That is something that's important to me, important to the city. So I want to make sure that we're meeting those goals.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Denise, for that important information. And Kevin, I might just suggest that for these public information meetings that we have coming up, that TC members may wish to attend to see final information or just what other people are seeing. So if you could make sure and get those invitations out to TC members as well as everybody else so that people are aware of those public information meetings if they choose to attend them.
Yep, I'll do that. We have an email blast scheduled 2 weeks before each meeting, but I believe we're also slowly adding the meetings to the city calendar as other events. But I'll make sure that the committee also gets copied on those.
Great. That's wonderful. Thanks so much. A lot of really excellent work. Any last comments or questions for Kevin? Okay, thanks so much, Kevin.
Thank you all.
Okay, next we have a quarterly traffic safety report, and we have a new lieutenant with us this evening. Am I saying your name right? Is it Meinert? Or how
Correct. Yep,
okay. Meinert? Well, welcome. We appreciate having you here. And maybe you want to just introduce yourself a little bit before we get into the quarterly traffic safety report.
Yeah, so I recently took over Lieutenant Jen Hanna's spot, so we actually just flip-flopped roles. So I was the Central Patrol Lieutenant prior to this for several years. So I am now the Traffic and Events Lieutenant, so a lot of different hats. So yeah, I appreciate the invite to present the quarterly report, and whenever you're ready, I can present.
Sure, go ahead.
All right, I'll share my screen here. Sorry, commonly, let's see. I'm failing miserably here. Sorry. 1 second here.
There we go.
All right, I'm going to do presenter view. All right.
Excellent. Great.
Okay, perfect. All right. So a lot of this is probably very similar to what Lieutenant Hanna has presented in the past, but our enforcement goals, we focus on the high injury network. We have focused on our hazardous moving violations over non-hazardous. Also focusing on school zone safety and responding to community member complaints. Just a quick overview of our citations and warnings from Q4 compared to prior quarters. The green is the hazardous and the red, the green is the non-hazardous and the red is, the orange, I should say, is the hazardous citations. As you can see, just kind of a brief overview. I know we don't have a lot of time. The majority of the citations, as every quarter, is for speeding. And I don't know, can you see my cursor or no?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, the speeding is typically every quarter the biggest hazardous violation that we're giving out. And then after that, it's usually operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated, followed by following too close, which is usually a result of crashes. And then non-hazardous, you can see obviously a lot less. The typical non-hazardous violations are for not having a driver's license or your vehicle not being registered. And then again, just another graph showing how we focus on hazardous versus non-hazardous citations, the hazardous being in green. Oops. And those are just the warnings. And the non-hazardous warnings. And I'll talk about the fourth quarter fatality crashes. So in the fourth quarter, we had 7 traffic-related fatalities related to 5 crashes. And I'll summarize them briefly. So in mid-October, around 4:42 a.m. on the Beltline, which was about around this location here, there's a lone vehicle crash. A long story short, the road surface was dry. It was dark out. Essentially, the unit was traveling westbound on the on Highway 12 there between Gammon Road and Mineral Point Road, which I pointed out. It ended up striking the guardrail. It rolled a number of times, and then ultimately came to a rest on the side of the vehicle. The driver was ejected and ultimately died as a result. Here's a brief overview of what happened. You can see he's westbound, hit the guardrail, rolled. The driver was a 46-year-old suspected of alcohol and drug use. And basically his driver actions where he failed to keep in this proper lane, operating recklessly or in a negligent manner. The second crash of the quarter was November 8th around 1:28 in the morning on Cross Country Road. You can see where it happened there. Also a lone vehicle. Road surface was dry in this one as well. So the unit was moving on east on Cross Country Road, speeding, failed to negotiate the left curb in the roadway, struck the curb, continued off the road, struck a sign, then entered onto the roadway, rolled around, ejected all the occupants, and then ended up coming to a stop on its roof. The driver survived and sustained life-threatening injuries, but did survive. The 3 occupants unfortunately suffered fatal injuries. The vehicle, again, traveling here on cross country. So the occupant, I should say the driver occupant, is a 39-year-old suspected of alcohol and drugs. He exceeded the speed limit, ran off the roadway, also obviously operating aggressively in a reckless manner. The passengers, 43-year-old, 50-year-old, and 30-year-old, none of them were in their seatbelts, unfortunately, and unfortunately did all pass. And just real quick with this one, excuse me, we did just refer charges for homicide by, I believe it was homicide by negligent operation of a vehicle, if I'm correct, for the driver. Crash 3 happened mid-November, around 11:38 a.m. Stoughton Road, another lone vehicle crash about right here. So this is Buckeye here, Helgeson. So I'll show you here on the map here. So road surface was dry. The vehicle was traveling northbound on Highway 51, ended up leaving the left side of the roadway and collided with a tree. And then the driver sustained a fatal injury. Another lone occupant, lone driver. It was a Honda Accord. You see here how he was traveling, ended up striking the tree and ended up coming to a rest here. The driver was a 44-year-old, suffered a fatal injury, and again, speeding was the main action. Crash 4 happened on November 20th, around 10:30 at night on Knutson. Again, road surface was dry. The driver was driving westbound in the parking lot. Ended up, well, long story short, I'm just going to get to the crash. What happened? So the driver was traveling in the parking lot, sustained a medical event, ended up hitting Unit 2. Unit 2 ended up colliding with the pedestrian. And Unit 1, who's the driver, because she was suffering a medical event, she continued on, ended up striking Unit 3. Luckily, nobody was around here or in this vehicle, and then ended up coming to a stop. So the driver was a 64-year-old, again, had a medical-related incident that caused the accident. The involved pedestrian was a 46-year-old. And for that one, we did refer that one to the DA's office, and they reviewed the case, and they are not pursuing any legal actions on that one. Crash 5 happened mid-December around 6:19 a.m. on East Wash and Independence. That was a motor vehicle versus pedestrian also. And the road conditions were dry. And I'll just explain this one on the map. So this one, Unit 1 was driving westbound on East Washington Avenue. It was early in the morning, dark, the pedestrian wasn't in the crosswalk and was wearing dark clothing and essentially couldn't be seen by Unit 1 and was ultimately struck and killed. So the driver of that vehicle is a 34-year-old, no alcohol or blood on board there. And the pedestrian struck was a 42-year-old, no alcohol or drugs that we're aware of. And they were improperly crossing the roadway. For the total fatalities for 2025, we had 12. Now that's including the passengers within the car compared to 11 in 24 and 16 in 23. For crashes, we had 5 in quarter 4. That resulted in, so the red signifies the fatalities and the yellow signifies the serious injury crashes anyways. So, and when I say 5, that is 5 crashes. Of course, we had 7 actual fatalities. And then this is just signifies our complaints that we receive to the office. It's up a little bit from last year, but down from 23, which is surprising because I feel like we've gotten a lot more complaints. And then typically, I know John breezes through the traffic grants, but because we weren't approved the traffic grants until February of this year, we of course couldn't run any traffic grants for this last cycle from it would have been October to January. So, but the minute we got approved in February, we started running grants. So now we are running all 4 grants from the state: the speed grant, bike ped grant, alcohol grant, and seatbelt grants. So we are running them full force, and we're going to run those until we use up all the money, which will be the grant cycle ends in October, I believe. So those will be run almost every day. So that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Comments or questions for the lieutenant? Bill, go ahead.
Thanks, Ann. Lieutenant, I have a question regarding the draw of blood. Is it standard practice that blood is drawn on fatalities so that can be submitted to the state for their record?
Yeah, so the laws have changed over the years. When I first started, anytime there was a fatality, and this was back in 1999, anytime there was a fatality, you could automatically draw blood, even if they refuse. And now that's not the case. So you also have to get apply for essentially a blood draw warrant. Now somebody refuses, which didn't used to be the case. So it's a lot more restricting nowadays of what we can and can't do.
But that's even for the fatality?
Yeah.
Okay. I was not aware of that. I thought that was state wanted blood for all the fatalities. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Usually everyone is cooperative. Like, that's a pretty significant thing.
Yeah.
But typically everyone is cooperative and they'll provide, a blood draw. So.
Thanks. Anybody have any other comments or questions? Okay, well, thanks for coming. We've had a lot of discussions about fatalities and traffic improvements that we can make, and particularly with regard to activities around schools. So we'll be interested in hearing your thoughts about that as well in the future, because we've had a lot of discussions about making improvements as we can with regard to those safe routes to school.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're definitely doing our best to hit the school zones and do as much enforcement as we possibly can, because yeah, it's a tragedy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Yang, did you have anything to add?
No, thank you, Ann. Yeah, I just want to say I agree with, we need to emphasize the safety around the school zones.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know traffic engineering works very closely with the police department on any crashes like that. So other comments or questions? Okay, thanks so much for coming. It's great to meet you, and we'll look forward to seeing you with the next quarterly report.
Absolutely. It's nice to meet everyone as well. Take care.
Okay, thanks. Okay, next we have any reports from people who are on other BCCs. Anybody have anything? Harold, go ahead.
Very briefly, at Board of Public Works last week, we approved the plans and specifications for the new traffic signal at Milwaukee and Spricker that we had in front of us a while ago. So that is happening. That's all I have to report.
Okay, thanks. Other comments or questions from folks on other BCCs? Okay, thanks. I don't have any announcements tonight. I'm just going to move on to future agenda items. We have one referral from the council for the April 15th meeting, potential item from Stephanie with regard to parking meter payment applications. Potential discussion with regard to Wistat Park Street jurisdiction and short-term solutions on Park Street. We'll see how that timing works. We've delayed the no right on red review and discussion because we've, as clearly we can tell since we're at 8:19, we've had a lot of things going on that we want to talk about. Vision Zero progress report, annual crash report, Safe Streets Madison scoring prioritization, which will likely move up in the agenda, and then Department of Transportation annual operations report when we have time. Bill.
Thanks, Ann. When you talked about the right turn on red future discussion, there was a webinar, and I just wonder if any of the city staff or you did, Ann, watch that. I thought it was very good and excellent. I was able to download those PowerPoint slides if anybody is interested in looking at those.
Yeah, I attended. Yang, I think you had some folks attend from traffic engineering as well, did you not?
Yes, I and another colleague were there.
Yeah. I had to look up the Wisconsin laws because it was California, I think. So that was a little problematic, but very interesting discussion.
Yeah, thanks.
So something else that I want to take offline and talk with Yang and Christoph and others about is Chris's comment earlier about we had a great discussion going, but it wasn't exactly relevant to approving the traffic signal priority list this evening. Would be to perhaps think about having a workshop or two during the year so that we can gather together some of these more informational type topics into a separate Transportation Commission meeting. So we can keep our regular meetings going and then have these separate meetings that would be more brainstorming and opportunities for discussion. So are people interested in doing something like that to try and give us that opportunity to have the conversations we were enjoying, but really sort of clog up our regular meeting where we have these action items. So something for you to think about, because obviously we have to talk to staff because staff has to have the time and the ability to put something like this together. And of course, we'd have to find a good time for everybody to attend. Thoughts about that, Denise? Can't hear you, Denise.
There you go. So thank you. Yeah, I'd love to see something like that. I mean, I know we had to really manage time, but the information that Jerry shared and then Christoph added to about the MUTCD stuff and the warrants was new information for me. I suspected it, but it was really validating. And I think we have to figure out how we build educational opportunities for TC members so that we can all do our jobs to the best of our abilities, recognizing that, that not all TC members are engineers. So I'd like to continue to challenge us to figure out how we do that and also not have meetings that end at 9:30 at night. Yeah, so I believe there's a both and that lives there.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can either share information, through PowerPoints that people or webinars like Bill was talking about, where we can just attend at our own pace and time, or we can try having, a separate workshop type session. Like I think Plan Commission does that, don't they, Chris, from time to time? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They do, I think, maybe 3 of those a year. And they tend to be 3 topics for discussion, limited to 3 hours, and in person for what it's worth.
Okay. So something to think about as a way for us to understand tools better and to keep us all on the same page. So as we make those decisions, as Denise was talking about, we can have the tools without spending TC action time to get that information. So if staff can be thinking about that, we can maybe come up with some alternatives that we can offer. Because it sounds like people might be interested in that. So other topics for future agenda items. Okay, again, thanks so much. A lot of great work, a lot of great participation. And I thank you all because you all clearly spend time getting ready for these meetings and are so committed to stay with us for, we were over 4 hours last time and we're over 3 hours tonight. So much appreciated and thanks so much. And we'll see you next time. Oh, I need a motion to adjourn. There we go, Harold.
Motion to adjourn.
And Alder O'Brien.
Second.
Okay, I get so tired each time that I'm just ready to go. All right, we have a motion and a second, and I'm going to assume unanimous consent vote to adjourn. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate your participation.